Chapter 502. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. Her mother-in-law? How could Princess Xinyang be her mother-in-law? Xiao Lulang wasn't Princess Xinyang's son. Princess Xinyang only had one son, Xiao Hang. Xiao Hang was already dead. Wait a minute. Could it be that Princess Xinyang took Xiao Lulang as her adopted son? Rather than believing that Xiao Lulang was the dead Xiao Hang, Gu Chongqing's first thought was to take him in as her adopted son. Gu Chongqing couldn't be blamed for thinking this way. There was a rumor in the capital that Xiao Lulang and Xiao Hang looked very similar. Because of this, Marquis Xianping also cared a lot about Xiao Lulang. Could it be that Princess Xinyang saw her son's shadow in Xiao Lulang and decided to take him in as her adopted son to comfort her missing her son? Anyone who knew Princess Xinyang well enough would know that she wouldn't easily take an unrelated person as a substitute for her dead son. However, Gu Chongqing and Princess Xinyang weren't even acquaintances. The only time they spoke was when Princess Xinyang waited at the city gates for Gu Chongqing to give her the protective talisman. And it's good to have a princess mother-in-law. It's good to have a husband. Husband, that's right, his sister had a husband. Gu Chongqing's handsome face suddenly darkened. Your hand. Gu Jiao discovered that Gu Chongqing's left hand was wrapped in gauze. Gu Chongqing came back to his senses and looked at his hand. He said nonchalantly, "It's fine." Gu Jiao couldn't remember what she had done, but in her dream, Gu Chongqing's hand wasn't injured. At least, it wasn't to the point where it needed to be bandaged. So Gu Jiao guessed that his injury might have something to do with her. She really couldn't control herself. "What are you thinking about?" Gu Chongqing looked at her and said with a bit of affection. "It has nothing to do with you, don't think too much." Gu Jiao paused and said, "If I do this again, you should knock me out earlier. You will be in pain." Gu Chongqing stretched out his other hand and rubbed her head. He pointed at the talisman in her hand and said, "Don't you already have this?" Gu Jiao thought for a moment and said, "That's true." Gu Chongqing looked at her deeply, wondering what she had experienced in the past to end up in such a state. In Jianghu, there was a saying called Qigong deviation. This was a rather exaggerated saying. In fact, it was a physical or mental problem caused by excessive practice of martial arts. Most of them were men of sacrifice. He felt that Gu Jiao was not like that. She seemed to have suddenly lost control and then returned to normal. But it didn't matter. He would find a way to cure her. If 1 month wasn't enough, then a year. If 1 year wasn't enough, then 10 years. If there was no doctor in Zhao, then go to Chen. If there was no doctor in Chen, then go to Shang. "Don't worry," he said softly. Gu Jiao blinked and looked at him. "What are you worried about?" Gu Chongqing said calmly, "I said my hand, don't worry." Gu Jiao said, "Oh." She put the talisman back into her clothes. Thinking of something, she looked around. "What are you looking for?" Gu Chongqing asked. "The small basket," Gu Jiao said. Her small medicine box was inside. "It's in the hands of a soldier called Hu Dongqiang. I said I was your older brother and asked him to give me your things, but he wouldn't." As Gu Chongqing spoke, he sighed helplessly. "I told him that I was the young master of the Gu family army and that I was personally appointed by His Majesty as a general and commander. He didn't listen to me, so I killed him." Gu Jiao said, "He only listens to me." Gu Chongqing laughed in spite of himself. "Yes, he only listens to you." This girl was quite good at picking people. Gu Jiao's clothes had already been changed by the servant girls sent by the governor's office. She put them on and went to sleep, so there was no need for her to see other men. Gu Chongqing called Hu Dongqiang in. When Hu Dongqiang saw Gu Jiao, he was extremely excited. "Dr. Gu." Gu Chongqing had already gone to the side to read the letter. To be honest, he was quite far from the bed. However, his presence was too strong. Hu Dongqiang almost threw himself at Gu Jiao, but he felt a chill on his back and retreated. He stood 3 steps away from the bed and cleared his throat. "Dr. Gu, are you all right?" Gu Jiao said, "I'm fine. What about you?" Hu Dongqiang held the small basket with one hand and patted his chest with the other. "I'm fine too." It was all thanks to the timely arrival of the Gu army that the Chen army didn't manage to reach the casualty barracks. "Dr. Gu, this is what you gave me. I've been holding it the entire time and haven't let a second person get close." When he said this, he secretly glanced at Gu Chongqing from the corner of his eye. Gu Chongqing silently read the letter, as if he didn't care or hear their conversation at all. However, Hu Dongqiang still lowered his voice and whispered, "Dr. Gu, is the commander really your older brother?" Gu Chongqing's ears suddenly perked up. Gu Jiao nodded. "Yes, he is." Seeing as he was protecting her small welfare, she would let him be her older brother for a day. The corners of Gu Chongqing's lips unconsciously hooked up, and his back straightened even more. Gu Jiao and Hu Dongqiang chatted for a while, mainly asking about the situation at the casualty barracks. From Hu Dongqiang, Gu Jiao learned that Gu Chongqing had brought a medical team of over 100 people. There were medical officials from the imperial court and doctors from the common people. Dr. Song and Dr. Liu from the Miracle Hands Hall also came. The doctors from the common people were all assigned and managed by Dr. Song. "Dr. Song does things just like you, especially well." Hu Dongqiang couldn't hide his pride as he spoke. These words seemed to be praising Dr. Song, but they were actually praising Gu Jiao. He was now Dr. Gu's subordinate. Dr. Gu was amazing, so he was proud. It was just that he hadn't studied much, so other than saying good, he couldn't find any other words to praise. Dr. Song, or to be exact, all the doctors in the Miracle Hands Hall had inherited Gu Jiao's style of doing things. They handled things in an orderly manner. There were a lot of wounded soldiers, so even with the addition of this medical team, it was still not enough. But at the same time, there was no panic or chaos. The patient's emotions were very well pacified. Of course, there was the quality of a soldier, but there was also the efforts of Dr. Song and the entire medical team. After Hu Dongqiang left, Gu Jiao looked at Gu Chongqing with appreciation. "How did you think of forming such a large medical team?" "It wasn't my idea," Gu Chongqing said. The battlefield was a very dangerous place. The imperial court's medical officials were duty-bound, but the common people's doctors were the common people. Gu Chongqing wouldn't easily recruit them. However, the second boss found Gu Chongqing and said that their medical hall was willing to send a few doctors to go north with him. The medical hall would take care of the medicine and travel expenses. This news somehow spread like wildfire. When the country was in danger, the common people were brave and chivalrous. Gradually, many medical halls came to the imperial court. The Emperor and Empress Dowager Zhuang both felt that this was feasible, so they selected a group of strong doctors from the common people who could withstand the long journey and the bitter cold of the frontier. "There is one more thing," Gu Chongqing said. "What?" Gu Jiao asked. Yu Zhou's Lin family donated 100,000 gold taels to fight the enemy at the frontier. Gu Chongqing said. It was Lin Chengye's home. Originally, Old Man Lin only planned to donate 50,000 gold taels. Who would have thought that Lin Chengye would rush back and hug his father's thigh and act pitiful and cute? He also said that if the imperial court didn't have money to fight the war, his little teacher's wife would starve to death at the frontier. It was unknown whether Old Man Lin was moved by his son or by the future potential of Gu Jiao and Xiao Lulang. In short, after donating a tower to the Imperial College, he also generously paid for the frontier. As the two talked, Gu Jiao's stomach growled. Gu Chongqing hurriedly said, "Wait a moment. I'll get you something to eat." Gu Chongqing left the tent. When the cold wind blew, he vaguely felt that he had forgotten something, but he couldn't remember it for a while. In a wounded soldier's tent 100 steps away, Gu Changfeng was lying on a makeshift bed made of wood. He was bored to death. All the patients in this tent were transferred from the critical camp. Their injuries were basically under control, but they still needed follow-up observation and treatment. There were more than a dozen such beds in the small tent. Gu Chengfeng was lying on the innermost side, and Tang Yueshan was on the other side. Tang Yueshan never expected that he would be lying in the same tent as Gu Chengfeng and inexplicably become bedmates. One of them had his arm and the other had his leg in a sling. It was very miserable. Soon, it was time to eat. The soldiers brought porridge and steamed buns. Tang Yueshan's mouth was almost empty. He frowned and said, "Didn't you order pickled vegetables?" He knew that Gu Chongqing brought provisions to the north. He didn't dare to say whether there would be meat or not, but there would definitely be pickled vegetables. Dr. Song came over and said to Tang Yueshan, "Your wound is stitched. You should eat light food." It was the tone of a doctor to a patient. It was particularly serious, and there was no room for negotiation. Tang Yueshan's face sank, and a strong marshal's aura broke out. "Who gave you the courage to talk to me like this?" Dr. Song was not afraid of force. He said in a neither servile nor overbearing tone, "Dr. Gu." She said that if the patient is disobedient, call her to give the patient 2 injections. Tang Yueshan's arrogance was extinguished. On the other side, his little bedmate Gu Chengfeng also didn't have much appetite. Gu Chengfeng didn't dislike the light food. He was thinking about how to face his elder brother next. Grandfather didn't seem to have mentioned to his elder brother that he knew martial arts. Even if he did, Grandfather didn't know how high his martial arts were. He thought that he only knew a little bit of martial arts and couldn't be seen in public. Under such circumstances, his elder brother must have thought that he was worried and angry. But then again, his performance in the frontier fortress shouldn't be too bad, right? How fierce he was on the battlefield, the defenders saw it, and so did his elder brother. Would his elder brother look at him in a new light? "Second brother, I used to look down on you. It turns out that you are so capable. I am proud of you." Thinking that his elder brother would praise him like this later, Gu Chengfeng couldn't help but giggle. Tang Yueshan was eating steamed buns and drinking porridge. As soon as he turned his head, he saw Gu Chengfeng giggling and blushing. He was so scared that his hand trembled and the steamed bun fell. Gu Chengfeng began to look forward to his elder brother's arrival. However, he waited from noon to afternoon, and from afternoon to night, but he still didn't see his elder brother. His elder brother must be too busy. Ancient Moon City had just experienced a war, so there must be a lot of things to do. His elder brother must be so busy that his feet didn't touch the ground, so he didn't have time to come here to see him. His elder brother, who was so busy that his feet didn't touch the ground, had already assigned the tasks in an orderly manner. At this time, he was sitting quietly in the tent, listening to his subordinates report on the movements of the Chen army while repairing the broken small flowers on Gu Jiao's red tasseled spear. Digression. Little Feng Feng. Hello? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642-826/1094424451. HTML Genius memorized this site's address in a second. www.zhhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile reading website, zhhbqg.com. Chapter 503. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all here. At night, Gu Chengfeng didn't wait for his big brother and fell asleep while feeling wronged. Humph, big brother will definitely come to see him tomorrow. The next day, Gu Chongqing went out of the city. Gu Chongqing went out of the city with Gu Jiao. The crisis in Ancient Moon City had been resolved, but there were still 2 crises waiting for them in the upcoming battle. One was Gu Chongqing's legs being cut off, and the other was the annihilation of the Gu army. These two matters were actually related. The cause was Lingguan City, which was guarded by the remnants of the previous dynasty. In order to deal with the Gu family army, the remnants of the previous dynasty did everything they could to deal with them. It was unknown where they got an epidemic patient and let him infect the people in the city. After the Gu family army took back Lingguan City, they did not know that a plague had quietly spread in the city. By the time the doctors confirmed that it was a plague, the Gu army had already been infected. This kind of plague was most likely a plague. It had a short incubation period, very fast onset, serious symptoms, and a high mortality rate. The Gu army quickly took measures, but it was still a step too late. A large number of the Gu army were infected. Because they couldn't get proper treatment, hundreds of Gu army soldiers died of illness in the isolated tents every day. In order to completely stop the plague, their bodies could only be burned. Even their ashes couldn't be brought back. Gu Chongqing was plotted against when he was looking for medicine for them. It was a very powerful death warrior. His skills weren't inferior to the Zhao country's Dragon Shadow Guard, but the other party didn't take Gu Chongqing's life. He only cut off his legs. The other party's goal seemed to be to let Gu Chongqing live soberly and painfully. He lost the Gu army, his grandfather, and his younger brother, but he still left Gu Changlin in his residence. This caused him to live a life worse than death. He wanted to die but couldn't. He lived forever in the abyss of pain. Gu Jiao seriously thought about it. In order to save the Gu family army, they had to stop the plague from spreading from the source. To avoid Gu Chongqing's tragedy, preventing him from leaving the army to search for medicine was secondary. The most effective method was to find that powerful death warrior and kill him. Gu Jiao didn't know where the man of sacrifice was for the time being, so she had to deal with the plague first. On the way to Lingguan City, the two rode through the snow. Gu Chongqing suddenly turned to look at her. "Your horsemanship has improved." In the capital, Gu Jiao didn't know how to ride a horse. Gu Jiao said, "We rode horses all the way from the capital to here, so I learned how to do it." To be honest, her equestrian skills were not that good, but the horse was good. She did not need to use too much skill to control the horse, and the horse ran quite happily on its own. But his younger sister's improvement, no matter how small, was still big. Gu Chongqing was very gratified. He looked at Gu Jiao with shining eyes. "That's right." Thinking of the purpose of going to Lingguan City, he asked again, "How do you know that there are plague victims in Lingguan City?" Gu Jiao's expression didn't change as she said, "I went to Lingguan City last time, and also went to the previous dynasty's headquarters. But I know that this information has nothing to do with me going to Lingguan City." Gu Jiao added in her heart. Gu Chongqing naturally filled in the information that she didn't say. Gu Jiao went to the governor's office and eavesdropped on the plans of the previous dynasty's remnants. It had to be said that the Gu father and son were very good at filling in the blanks. News of the Gu family army wiping out the Chen country's 20,000 soldiers spread like wildfire. Lingguan City's defenses were tighter than before. However, the border cities were not like the capital, which was surrounded by city walls. Lingguan City only had a few checkpoints on the roads that had to be passed through. Passing through these checkpoints wasn't difficult for the two of them. The two hid their horses in the nearby forest. Then, Gu Chongqing used his qinggong to bring Gu Jiao around the side. This kind of terrifying danger naturally wouldn't be placed in the governor's office. The remnants of the previous dynasty had locked up the plague victims in a small village to the northwest of Lingguan City. The two of them went straight to the small village after entering the city. The small village was located at the foot of a mountain. It was surrounded by mountains on 3 sides and water on one side. To enter the village, they had to cross a wooden bridge over the river. The two of them crouched down behind a bush and carefully observed the movements in the village. The village was very small. There were only a dozen or so small huts made of mud and grass. The doors and windows of the huts were tightly shut. Occasionally, a few suppressed coughs could be heard from inside. The two of them observed for a long time. Gu Chongqing whispered, "Strange, there aren't any guards." "The door isn't locked either," Gu Jiao said. Gu Chongqing nodded. This was a very suspicious point. The plague victims were locked up here. Although they were used to deal with the Gu family army, the Gu family army hadn't attacked Lingguan City yet. The ones guarding this place were the remnants of the previous dynasty's rebel army. The streets were filled with soldiers from the previous dynasty. Weren't they afraid that these patients would accidentally infect their own people if they ran out? Gu Jiao also felt this was very strange. In the dream, she only saw the result and not the process. That was why Shi Yi couldn't figure out what kind of medicine the remnants of the previous dynasty were selling before releasing these patients. But since they were here, they could at least figure it out. Someone's coming. Gu Chongqing used his hand to protect Gu Jiao's head and pressed down with her into the bush. The ones who came were 2 soldiers from the previous dynasty. The 2 of them each carried a large box of food as they walked through the crunching snow. When Gu Chongqing brought Gu Jiao over, he had used his qinggong, so they didn't leave any footprints in the snow. The soldiers walked past Gu Chongqing and Gu Jiao. The 2 soldiers came to the village and placed the food boxes in the open space in front of them before leaving. "Are they delivering food?" Gu Jiao asked. "It looks like it. It's time for lunch now. Are you hungry?" Gu Chongqing's main point suddenly went off track. Gu Jiao was about to say that she wasn't hungry when she saw Gu Chongqing take out something wrapped in craft paper. After opening it, it was actually a bag of dried meat. Gu Jiao. Before Gu Jiao could eat, there was movement in one of the small wooden huts in the village. With a creak, the wooden door was pulled open from the inside. A tall and burly man slowly walked out. He was wrapped in a thick blanket and held an empty bowl. His steps were heavy and sonorous. Gu Jiao felt that his aura was familiar. Gu Jiao used her index finger to write 2 words in the snow: kamikaze soldier. Gu Chongqing frowned. He took her cold fingertips and warmed them in his hands. The 2 of them continued to observe the situation in the house. This kamikaze soldier's complexion and condition were not right. It was obvious that he was also a victim of the plague. He came to the open space in the village and opened the food box on the left. He slowly took out a biscuit and a steamed bun. He then opened the food box on the right and scooped out a bowl of black medicine. After doing all this, he turned and went back into the hut. He walked with some difficulty. It was obvious that the disease had taken root and sprouted in his body. After he closed the doors of the other huts began to open one after another. The villagers who came out after him were all villagers who did not know martial arts. They were between 20 and 40 years old and belonged to the age when their bodies were in better condition. They seemed to have been carefully selected. Gu Chongqing's heart sank. There were 2 villagers in each hut. There were a total of 14 people. Like the kamikaze soldier, these people had also taken out dry food and medicine. "Can you smell what medicine it is?" Gu Chongqing took out a dagger and wrote a line of words in the snow with the scabbard. He then handed the dagger to Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao wrote, "Medicine to cure the plague." "Can it be cured?" Gu Chongqing took the dagger and wrote. Gu Jiao shook her head. It could not be cured. If this was really the plague, they would have to use streptomycin, tetracycline, chloramphenicol, or sulfonamides. This kind of medicine could only alleviate the symptoms to a certain extent and allow the patient to live for a few more days. In the end, they would still lose their lives. Gu Chongqing fell into deep thought. The 2 of them crouched behind the bushes for a while. Suddenly, the door of the easternmost hut opened. A young man in his early 20s sneaked out. Gu Jiao had noticed him when he was getting his meal. Gu Jiao was a doctor and could tell whose symptoms were the most severe. However, this young man's symptoms were the least severe. Gu Jiao thus paid more attention to him. The young man probably wanted to escape. He crept across the clearing and walked towards the wooden bridge. However, before he could put one foot on the bridge, he was thrown to the ground by a strong force. He fell into the snow and immediately had a nosebleed. "If there's a next time, I'll chop you into pieces and feed you to the dogs." It was the kamikaze soldier's voice. At this point, Gu Jiao and Gu Chongqing finally understood why there was no one guarding this place. With that powerful kamikaze soldier here, none of the villagers here could escape. Moreover, it could reduce the risk of the soldiers being infected. The young man covered his bleeding nose and resigned himself to his fate as he crawled back to his hut. Gu Chongqing's eyes suddenly turned cold. He understood what the remnants of the previous dynasty were planning. Lingguan City would eventually have a battle. If the Gu army lost, Lingguan City would still be the remnants of the previous dynasty. Then these plague patients would be executed on the spot. And if the Gu army won, these plague patients would be released to infect the citizens and the Gu army. This was the so-called, if you can't get it, destroy it. As for why they didn't directly drive this group of patients to Yuegu City, it was because they were sick and couldn't walk that far. Secondly, it was easy for accidents to happen on the way. If one of them ran away, or accidentally came into contact with the soldiers, the consequences would be unimaginable. Gu Chongqing's eyes were cold to the freezing point. He didn't even use his dagger. He stood up and said, "I'll go kill that kamikaze soldier." Gu Jiao held his hand. "I'll go kill him." Digression. Today is also the day I want monthly votes. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642-826/1094369998. HTML Genius remembers this site's address in a second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile version reading website, m. zhbqg.com. Chapter 504. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more frequently. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that you can't find online. That won't do. Gu Chongqing refused without thinking. He had experienced how terrible the plague was. After almost every disaster or war, there would be an outbreak of the plague. It was just a matter of priority. Some epidemics could be stopped in time if they were discovered in time and controlled well, but death and injury were inevitable. He wouldn't allow her to take the risk. "I'm a doctor. I'll be fine," Gu Jiao said as she took out a small medicine box from the small basket. She put on gloves and goggles and a surgical gown. Gu Chongqing watched her take out so many strange things from a small medicine box. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. "You." He opened his mouth. Gu Jiao fastened the last two straps on the surgical gown and said to Gu Chongqing, "With these, I won't be afraid of infection." It was reasonable to say that protective clothing was the most effective, but there was no protective clothing in the small medicine box. There were only surgical gowns, and only one of them was her size. No one could change Gu Jiao's decision. Even if Gu Chongqing doubted that he should kill people, Gu Jiao would still go, unless he sealed her acupoints. But if the soldiers of the previous dynasty came back, she would be in danger if she stayed here alone with her acupoints sealed. After thinking about it again and again, Gu Chongqing could only agree to let her go. Gu Jiao didn't bring the red tasseled spear. She took out the dagger at her waist. Gu Chongqing gave her his dagger. "Use this." This dagger was sharper than Gu Jiao's dagger. "Okay." Gu Jiao didn't refuse. "Open the door," Gu Chongqing said. "Okay." Gu Jiao also agreed. See, she was obedient most of the time. Gu Jiao brought the dagger to the Death Warrior's room and knocked on the door. The footsteps came from the direction of the wooden bridge. The men of sacrifice thought it was a soldier from the previous dynasty. He opened the door. The moment the door opened, the man of sacrifice sensed that something was wrong. He slammed the door shut, but it was too late. Gu Jiao blocked the door with one foot and stabbed the man of sacrifice in the waist with the dagger in her hand. Closing the door was a conditioned reflex, but he immediately regretted it. Why did he close the door? He should have just killed. However, the opportunity was fleeting. If he attacked Gu Jiao directly, Gu Jiao might not succeed. Gu Jiao's strike was fast, ruthless, and accurate, leaving no room for the men of sacrifice to breathe. She pulled the knife out and blood splattered all over her body. The death warrior fell straight to the ground. He didn't understand how he died even when he was dying. Gu Chongqing saw the man of sacrifice's blood splattered all over Gu Jiao's body. He stood up from the bushes and strode over to Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao raised her hand to stop him. "I'm fine, don't come over." These were all infected bloodstains. Gu Chongqing stopped on the bridge and looked at her worriedly. Gu Jiao dragged the man of sacrifice into the small wooden house. There was firewood inside. Gu Jiao originally wanted to burn the body with the house, but after hesitating, she changed her mind. She looked around the house but couldn't find a shovel, so she went to knock on the door next door. Unexpectedly, the person inside didn't dare to open the door. Then, she went to a few other small wooden houses, but no one opened the door for her. Is it because I didn't speak? They don't know who I am, or do they think I am someone? Gu Jiao was hesitating whether she should speak or not when the door of the easternmost wooden house opened. The young man who had tried to escape but was brutally injured by the man of sacrifice limped out. The young man curiously looked at Gu Jiao, who was dressed strangely, and then looked at the man of sacrifice's body lying in a pool of blood in front of the house. He recognized that it was the man of sacrifice's body. He was stunned. Gu Jiao simply walked over to him and asked, "Do you have a shovel?" The young man was stunned again. "A girl. This is a girl. Do you have a shovel?" Gu Jiao asked again. Yes, you, girl, The young man didn't know how to call her, so he stammered, "Do you want a shovel?" Gu Jiao, "Yes." The young man turned around to get the shovel, but perhaps because he was too nervous and flustered, he bumped into the door, making him dizzy and seeing stars. After he entered the house, Gu Jiao heard a conversation that was deliberately lowered. "Who's here?" "I don't know, but it shouldn't be Prince Yi's people." Prince Yi, the leader of the remnants of the previous dynasty, was said to be the prince consort's uncle. "You're crazy. They won't let us talk to the people outside, and they won't let us open the door for them, or else they'll kill us. What's the difference between us staying here and waiting for death? What's more, she killed that man, so she must be here to help us." "How do you know?" "I don't care, I'm going to escape anyway." After saying this, the young man came out with a shovel. He handed the shovel to Gu Jiao. "Here." Gu Jiao was about to reach out to take it, but he thought of something and immediately took the shovel back. He took a step back and said to Gu Jiao, "We're infected with the plague, so be careful not to be infected." "I know." Gu Jiao stepped forward and took the shovel from his hand. "Thanks." "Hey." The young man still wanted to say something, but Gu Jiao had already turned and left. Gu Jiao dug a hole behind the village, and halfway through, the young man came over. "Do you want to dig a hole? Let me help you." "No need," Gu Jiao said. Although he was rejected, the young man still took another shovel and slid into the hole. Gu Jiao glanced at him, but didn't say anything. The speed of two people was much faster than one person. In a moment, a large hole was dug. Gu Jiao jumped up and pulled him up as well. The young man was hesitant at first, but seeing that she was wearing gloves, it didn't seem like they were touching skin to skin, so he handed his hand to Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao dragged the dead man's body over and threw it into the hole. She threw it into the hole with the firewood and burned it. The young man swallowed his saliva, and asked with fear and curiosity, "Did you really kill him?" He said this to his roommate just now to calm him down, but he was still a little in disbelief. "She was a master." "Yes." Gu Jiao nodded. The young man asked doubtfully, "Who are you? Why did you kill him? Were your relatives also captured by them?" At this point, he scratched his head and said embarrassedly, Am I asking too many questions?" "You don't have to say. You killed him, you're a good person." Gu Jiao's expression didn't change much, and she asked, "Who are the people locked up here?" The young man said, "There are all kinds of people, peddlers, squires, etc." Gu Jiao asked, "They're not the villagers who live here?" The young man said regretfully, "The villagers here were killed by them long ago, and we were all captured later. Our families were also captured by them. If we don't listen, they will torture our families, or send our families to die." Gu Jiao looked at him. "What about you? Why didn't you listen?" "I don't have a family." The young man's mood sank. His family was all dead, killed by the remnants of the previous dynasty. "So that's why." Gu Jiao paused and said, "Those soldiers only come to deliver food every day. Do they do anything else? For example, check on you or something?" The young man shook his head. "No, they don't dare to come close at all. You're the first." "Seriously, aren't you afraid of being infected? Or, have you already been infected?" "I'm not infected," Gu Jiao said. The young man hurriedly said, "Then quickly leave here. In another 2 hours, they will come to deliver dinner. If they find out that you're here and killed their people, they won't let you go." Gu Jiao asked, "What's your name?" The young man said, "My name is Shen Xian, my parents call me Little Shetu." Gu Jiao stared at him. "Little Shetu, can I trust you?" It was already 2 hours after they left Lingguan City. Gu Chongqing and Gu Jiao found the forest where they hid the horses and led them out. "Are you really okay?" Gu Chongqing asked. He was asking about her physical condition. Gu Jiao misunderstood and thought that he was worried about the situation in the stronghold. She said, "Every time those soldiers put down the food boxes and leave, they won't go into the house to check if the people inside are still there. When they deliver breakfast, the men of sacrifice will knock on their own door. This is a sign that they are still alive. As long as the soldiers know that they are still alive, they won't question the situation in the stronghold." Little Shetu moved to the men of sacrifice's house, and from now on, he will knock on the door every day. Gu Chongqing asked again, "What about the others? Will they sell him out?" Gu Jiao said, "If they want to keep themselves and their families alive, they won't." She promised to save their families and left enough medicine. As long as they took their medicine on time, they wouldn't die of the plague. In addition, Gu Jiao also told them that the Gu family's army had arrived at the frontier, and the person standing on the wooden bridge was the young master of the Gu family's army. The imperial court didn't give up the land of Zhao country, and they didn't give up on the people at the frontier. Gu Chongqing was deeply moved. His sister was indeed very capable. "How long will the treatment take?" Gu Chongqing asked. 7 to 10 days. Gu Jiao said, "He will carefully think of an escape route in the next few days. If we attack the city, let him know in advance. He will take the people in the stronghold and escape. He won't escape to a crowded place. He understands how contagious the plague is." Gu Chongqing pondered for a moment and said, "If that's the case, there won't be any worries." The original plan was to attack Lingguan City first. Lingguan City's geographical location was rather special. It formed a triangle with ancient Moon City and Yi City. After taking it, they could attack Yi City from both sides. Of course, correspondingly, when attacking Lingguan City, it was easy to be attacked from both sides by the remnants of the previous dynasty and the Chen State's army in Yi City. Gu Chongqing wasn't afraid of the enemy forces from the two cities joining hands. He had already investigated their forces. Lingguan City had 30,000 defenders, Yi City had 30,000 defenders, and the Gu family's army had 100,000. Even if they attacked from both sides, they wouldn't be afraid. Beiyang City was on the other side of Yi City. As long as they acted quickly enough, the enemy forces in Beiyang City wouldn't be able to arrive so quickly. Beiyang City seems to be sending reinforcements, Gu Jiao said. "There's something like that?" Gu Chongqing slightly knit his brows. Gu Jiao nodded. "Yes, Little Shetu said it. When he was taken to the governor's office, he accidentally heard a conversation between the prince consort and a general from the Chen state. The Chen state originally had 80,000 soldiers stationed at the frontier. When he heard that the Gu family's army was heading towards the frontier, Prince Bo also sent over 100,000 troops from various parts of the Chen state. The Chen state's army had lost 20,000 of its 80,000 soldiers. Adding on the 30,000 remnants of the previous dynasty, they only had 90,000 soldiers left. As long as the plague didn't break out, the Gu family's army could easily deal with these 90,000 people. However, if the Chen state's 100,000 reinforcements arrived, it would probably be a different story. Gu Chongqing nodded. From the looks of it, Beiyang City's 30,000 soldiers aren't that big of a threat. The 100,000 reinforcements on the way were. Gu Jiao said, but if we can use numbers to bully the enemy every time, we can minimize the Gu family's casualties. That way, even if the Chen state's reinforcements arrive, we might still have a chance of winning. Gu Chongqing, why do I suddenly feel that using numbers to bully the enemy is a good thing? What Gu Jiao didn't say was that compared to how to deal with the Chen state's 100,000 reinforcements, she was more interested in finding the hidden death warrior from the previous dynasty as soon as possible. Without the plague, Gu Chongqing wouldn't go looking for medicine. When would that death warrior find an opportunity to make a move on Gu Chongqing? The two returned to ancient Moon City together. After entering the city, they first went to the barracks. As soon as they arrived at the entrance of the barracks, the two saw the excited Governor Cheng. Governor Cheng's body was covered in snow. It seemed that it had snowed in ancient Moon City after they left, and Governor Cheng had been waiting in the heavy snow. General Gu. Dr. Gu. When Governor Cheng saw Gu Chongqing and Gu Jiao, his eyes lit up, and he greeted them with cupped hands. He already knew the identities of Gu Jiao and Gu Chengfeng, and he was extremely glad that he hadn't offended them. Gu Chongqing looked at him and asked indifferently, "What's the matter?" "Ah." This slightly serious tone made Governor Cheng's heart skip a beat. He suddenly realized that Gu Chongqing was asking him why he had left his post and appeared here. Ancient Moon City had just finished a battle, and there were still many things to take care of. As the governor of Ancient Moon City, he should have been dealing with the matters of settling the people. "I just came from the porridge stall." He couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Fortunately, he had indeed braved the wind and snow to help the disaster victims. "I'm here to report the situation to General Gu. It's cold outside. Go in first." Gu Chongqing lifted the curtain of the tent and let Gu Jiao in. His tone was so gentle that it was completely different from the serious General Gu from before. After Gu Jiao entered, Gu Chongqing's tone became indifferent again. "You don't have to report your own matters to me." "Ah, yes, yes." General Gu's expression changed faster than flipping a book. Governor Cheng muttered in his heart, but he smiled and said, "I have one more thing to report to General Gu." "What is it?" Gu Chongqing asked. "The old Duke is awake," Governor Cheng said with a smile. "The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/896428226/1094176060. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile reading website, zhbqg.com. Chapter 505. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel will be updated faster. Millions of novels will be read for free. All the novels that can't be found online will be available here. Governor Cheng noticed that General Gu looked a little confused after he finished speaking. Governor Cheng thought to himself, "I understand now. He must be too happy. Isn't it true that he came all the way here just to save his grandfather? Look at his reaction. What a filial grandson." However, he didn't have to be so confused. Why did he look like he suddenly remembered that he had a grandfather? Governor Cheng shook his head vigorously. Impossible, absolutely impossible. General Gu was a filial grandson. He wasn't the kind of person who would forget his grandfather just because he had a younger sister. Governor Cheng smiled and bowed. Then, I'll take my leave now. I still have some things to deal with in the yamen. I'll come back tomorrow to pay my respects to you. Gu Chongqing coughed softly and said, Okay, you can go now. After Governor Cheng left, Gu Chongqing wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. He turned around and entered the tent. His gaze fell on Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao was admiring her red tasseled spear. After the battle, the small braids on the spearhead were dirty. The small red flowers on the spear were also scratched. However, Gu Chongqing had cleaned and repaired them. They looked exactly the same as before. Do you like it? Gu Chongqing's gaze softened. I like it. Gu Jiao didn't have any special interest in small red flowers and small braids. However, they were all made by little Jing Kong himself. Gu Jiao had always cherished them. If little Jing Kong found out that they were broken, little Jing Kong would be sad. Gu Chongqing's mood suddenly improved when he heard that she liked them. He said, Grandfather is awake. I'll go to the governor's office later. He knew that Gu Jiao didn't accept him as her grandfather. That was why he didn't ask Gu Jiao to go with him. Unexpectedly, Gu Jiao took the initiative and said, I'll go with you. Now that his sworn brother had woken up, he had to visit him. Furthermore, she also had to protect Gu Chongqing to prevent the Death Warrior from the previous dynasty from plotting against him. Since Gu Jiao wanted to go, Gu Chongqing had no reason to stop her. For convenience, Gu Jiao had always dressed as a teenager in the frontier fortress, and today was no exception. But before they set off, Gu Chongqing found that she was wearing a mask. Gu Chongqing. The two of them went to the governor's office. The old marquis was still living in the room that Gu Jiao used to live in. This courtyard used to be quite empty, but recently, there was not enough space for the wounded soldiers, so other patients moved in one after another. It wasn't as if the old marquis hadn't woken up once these days, but it was only this morning that he was fully awake. He was finally no longer in a muddle-headed state. He remembered what had happened in Yi City and Lingguan City, the people he saw, the threats he received, the abuse he received. However, he had no recollection of how he was rescued. The servants of the governor's office couldn't explain it clearly, so they only sent someone to inform Governor Cheng. Governor Cheng wanted to personally come and get familiar with him, but he didn't have the guts to neglect his duties under the Gu family army's watch. The old marquis only knew that the Gu family army had arrived at the frontier fortress when he heard the servants say that wounded soldiers had moved into the governor's office. Then his grandson should be coming to see him soon. In the end, the old marquis waited an entire day, but his grandson didn't come to see him. In the corridor, Gu Chongqing and Gu Jiao stopped in their tracks. Gu Chongqing looked at Gu Jiao and said, Do you want to see grandfather? Gu Jiao reached out her small hand and tidied his clothes. She looked at him with a very kind gaze. You go first. Gu Chongqing. I suddenly feel that there is something wrong with my seniority. Gu Jiao blinked. I'll let you be my older brother for a day, that's enough. After this, I'll be your grandfather's sworn brother. Anyway, you know it too. Gu Jiao patted his shoulder. Go. Gu Chongqing. Gu Chongqing entered his grandfather's room under Gu Jiao's kind and gratified gaze. There were no wounded soldiers in the room next door for the time being, so Gu Jiao planned to go in and sit. Just as she opened the door, she caught a glimpse of two Gu family soldiers carrying a wounded soldier over. Then, they stopped in front of Gu Jiao. Dr. Gu. The two Gu family soldiers carrying the stretcher greeted Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao looked at the stretcher and saw that it was Gu Chengfeng. Why are you here? Why are you here? The two spoke at the same time. Gu Chengfeng valiantly said, I'm here to see my grandfather. I heard that my grandfather woke up, and it just so happened that there wasn't enough space in the wounded barracks, so I simply moved to the governor's office. What about you? You're here to treat the wounded soldiers? It couldn't be that she was here to see his grandfather. This girl wasn't even from the Gu family. Gu Jiao raised her eyebrows. I'm here to see my brother. Pfft, your brother is at the governor's office. Gu Chengfeng was amused by Gu Jiao. This girl's bragging skills were getting better and better. He couldn't believe that he actually believed that she went north with some idiot to save her brother. However, after spending so much time together, he hadn't even seen a strand of hair on her brother and the idiot's person, let alone them. In his opinion, this girl was simply lying. He is here, Gu Jiao said seriously. Oh. Gu Chengfeng chuckled. Then who is your brother? Point him out. Gu Jiao thought for a moment. I'm afraid I'll scare you to death. Keep bragging, you'll scare me to death? As long as your brother isn't my grandfather, even Tang Yueshan won't scare me to death. You called me? Tang Yueshan's voice suddenly came from behind Gu Chengfeng's stretcher. F***CK. Gu Chengfeng shuddered and fell off the stretcher with a thud. He looked at Tang Yueshan awkwardly. Why are you here? Did he see a ghost in broad daylight? Speaking of Cao Cao was not like this. Tang Yueshan said impatiently, You can move here, but I can't? It wasn't that he wanted to move, but that the wounded soldiers' barracks couldn't accommodate them. Allocation to the governor's office wasn't based on status, but on injuries. Tang Yueshan and Gu Chengfeng happened to be in the group with serious injuries but stable conditions that could be moved. Gu Chengfeng snorted. You can come, but you have to be in the same courtyard as me. Tang Yueshan said irritably, So what if we're in the same courtyard? It's not the same room. You're in the same ward. The accompanying doctor looked at the roster in his hand and said expressionlessly. The two of them were speechless. Gu Chengfeng and Tang Yueshan were carried into the room next to the old dukes. They had fought side by side on the battlefield and helped each other, but off the battlefield, they were no longer friends. Gu Chengfeng hated Tang Yueshan, and Tang Yueshan looked down on Gu Chengfeng. They didn't see eye to eye and nose to nose. In comparison, Tang Yueshan found Gu Jiao much more pleasing to the eye. Gu Jiao said to the accompanying doctor, Leave this to me. You can go do other things. Yes, Dr. Gu. The accompanying doctor went to settle the other patients. There was originally only one Ahut bed in the room, but another was added after the new patients. Tang Yueshan wasn't picky about the bed, and Gu Chengfeng successfully occupied the spacious Ahut bed. Tang Yueshan's small bamboo bed was pressed against the wall, and the old duke's was right next to it. In fact, the two rooms were originally one, but they were later separated by a wall made of rosewood. As a result, the soundproofing was inevitably worse. He heard voices from next door. Tang Yueshan wasn't a virtuous gentleman, but he wasn't a gentleman either. He swore that he didn't mean to eavesdrop. Tang Yueshan's expression changed as he listened. Gu Chengfeng glared at Tang Yueshan from time to time, and after the nth time, he noticed that something was wrong with Tang Yueshan. What was this guy doing? His ear was so close to the wall. Was he eavesdropping? His grandfather was next door. Tang Yueshan was so shameless. How dare he eavesdrop on his grandfather? He wanted to hear it too. When Gu Jiao took out 2 thermometers from the small medicine box, she turned around and saw 2 men who didn't get along with each other sitting on the small bamboo bed together. Their ears were pressed tightly against the wall. Gu Jiao, alas, you guys are really, you don't call me either. After a while, all 3 of their ears were attached to the wall. In the next room, the old duke had just woken up. He had regained his consciousness, but he hadn't learned any martial arts, so he didn't notice that someone was eavesdropping on him. Gu Chongqing noticed that there was someone next door, but he thought it was Gu Jiao, so he didn't pay much attention to it. The old duke couldn't help coughing for a while. Gu Chongqing handed him a cup of hot water. The old duke took it and looked at Gu Chongqing, who didn't make any eye contact with him. He sighed and said earnestly, Are you still angry with me? Gu Chongqing lowered his eyes and said, Grandfather, I don't understand. The old duke said earnestly, You're my eldest grandson. I raised you myself. How can I not know what you're thinking? There are some words that I originally planned to keep to myself and bring to my grave after I die. But not long ago, when I thought that I was definitely going to die, all I could think of was how regretful I was for not telling you everything. Gu Chongqing didn't say anything. He didn't care what his grandfather was hiding from him. The old duke put the teacup on a stool and said, "What I'm going to say next may be hard for you to accept." Gu Chongqing sneered at himself and said pointedly, "What can't I accept?" "You do." The old duke looked at him, his expression gradually becoming serious. "Do you think I killed your mother?" Gu Chongqing clenched his fingers. The old duke said, "Let me guess. Concubine Ling told you, right? I didn't expect that she would see what happened that year. Did she tell you that your mother's condition had improved at that time, but after I went to see her, her condition suddenly worsened? So I was the murderer, and you believed me. Could it be that I was wrong? Didn't grandfather give the order to the shadow guards to kill my mother? If Gu Chongqing hadn't found evidence, how could he be so convinced?" The old duke wasn't surprised that Gu Chongqing could find the shadow guards. He was his grandson, and he knew his ability very well. The old marquis nodded. "That's right. I once wanted to kill her." Gu Chongqing clenched his big hands, and a trace of pain appeared between his eyebrows. He almost gritted his teeth and said, "Why? What did my mother do wrong? Why do you have to kill her?" "Your mother." The old duke closed his eyes, and a complicated expression flitted across his face. "She was a spy of the former dynasty." The latest chapter of this book is not finished. For more wonderful content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642-8264286/1094156777. HTML Genius remembered the website address in a second. www.zhbqg. Kombiku Gu mobile reading website, m. zhbqg. Com. Chapter 506. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more frequently. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with a deeper meaning that can't be found online are all available here. The old marquis could almost imagine Gu Chongqing's reaction when he said that. His heart ached even when he looked at it, so he simply turned his face away. Paper couldn't wrap fire, but when the moment came, he still felt a great struggle. Gu Chongqing's entire body froze. The entire room fell into a dead silence. The old marquis felt that he should say something, but he wasn't good at saying things, especially comforting people. Moreover, it was easy to comfort strangers, but with his personality, it was always a bit awkward when comforting his loved ones. In fact, this matter, or to be exact, this scheme should have been set up when old concubine Jing entered the palace. Old concubine Jing was a loyalist of the previous dynasty. She met the old marquis by chance and was saved by the old marquis. Later on, it turned out to be a scheme with ulterior motives. If a person's feelings could be set up, why couldn't a family's marriage be set up? Both old concubine Jing and Madame Ling were pawns of the previous dynasty. The difference was that old concubine Jing had entered the palace, but Madame Ling hadn't. But that didn't mean that Madame Ling couldn't play a big role. The old marquis founded the Gu army by himself. If Madame Ling's son could become the young master of the Gu army, wouldn't that mean that the remnants of the previous dynasty would control the strongest army in the Zhao kingdom? The old marquis felt very guilty. The marriage between Gu Chong and Madame Ling was his oversight. If he had known that Madame Ling was a spy from the previous dynasty, he wouldn't have agreed to this marriage. But it was too late to say that now. Moreover, he looked at Gu Chongqing, who was suffering a huge blow but didn't show any signs of collapse. He had mixed feelings. If it weren't for Madame Ling, he wouldn't have such an excellent grandson. Gu Chongqing looked calm on the surface, but in fact, every inch of his body was soaked in cold air. His mother was a spy from the previous dynasty. His mother was a spy from the previous dynasty. He knew that his grandfather wouldn't lie to him about something like this. There was a voice in his head. Perhaps grandfather made a mistake, but why does my heart feel like it's being pricked by needles? What does Qing want to be when she grows up? I don't know. What does mother want me to do? Mother hopes that you can be an indomitable man like your grandfather. Then I'll join the army when I grow up. I want to go into battle like my grandfather and protect the country and its people. Damn, Qing is really amazing. His mother's gentle voice and expression were still vivid in his mind, as if it had happened yesterday. But now he could no longer tell whether the hope that burst out of her eyes when she said these words to him was her heart full of love or her ambition. The old Marquis found it hard to say what he wanted to say next, but if he didn't say it now, he was afraid that he would never have the chance or courage to say it again. He said, "In the face of a national crisis, I know you won't disagree with me on war matters just because you have a grudge against me. But I still want to tell you clearly that I didn't kill your mother." His heart wasn't calm either. No matter how many years had passed, as long as he recalled the matter of Madame Ling Jr., his heart would still surge uncontrollably. The old Marquis said bitterly, "When your mother was sick, she was in close contact with the people of the previous dynasty. I accidentally found a secret letter that she didn't have time to destroy. I learned that she had been secretly contacting someone. At that time, I didn't know who she was contacting, but the letter was full of inquiries about the movements of the Gu family army. So I was vigilant. I ordered the secret guards to keep an eye on her and secretly intercepted several secret letters. Finally, I found out her identity. You are a general of the imperial court. You should understand what the consequences would be if a spy of the previous dynasty appeared in a family like ours. In order to end all troubles, I decided to secretly kill her. But when I saw you, and your two younger brothers, I changed my mind. I wanted to ask her face to face. But he didn't expect to be seen by concubine Ling at that time." The old Marquis continued, "I went to find your mother and threw the secret letter in front of her, asking her to give me an explanation. She did not quibble and admitted it on the spot. She said that she was a spy of the previous dynasty. Her goal in infiltrating the Marquis Ding and manor was to plot against me, but I was often not in the manor and she could not find an opportunity. Afterwards, she gave birth to you. Seeing that I doted on you, the remnants of the previous dynasty came up with a plan and decided to have you inherit the Gu family army. You really didn't disappoint and received all of my high regard and expectations. However, things are always changing and developing. The appetite of the remnants of the previous dynasty is increasing day by day. They are no longer satisfied with just taking the Gu family army into their pockets. They have their eyes on you." Gu Chongqing's eyes slightly moved. "You still have two younger brothers. In reality, anyone can inherit the Gu family army, but they need a puppet master." As the old Marquis spoke, his eyes suddenly became cold. "They want to take you away and train you into the most outstanding death soldier. Your mother did not agree." Gu Chongqing clenched his fists and the veins on his forehead began to bulge. The old Marquis painfully said, "Your mother was clear on their methods and was even more clear on the consequences of betraying them. In order to protect you from being taken away by them and to not allow herself to be used against you three brothers, she killed the remnants of the previous dynasty that came to take you away and then chose to commit suicide." When Gu Chongqing heard this, his body began to gently tremble. The old Marquis looked at him and a trace of pain flashed through his heart. He sighed and said, "There is no wall in this world that does not have a crack. But sometimes, we have no other choice but to stake everything on a single throw." There was no other choice in Madame Ling's death. He had no other choice in hiding it from the Emperor. At the time, the Emperor and him had planned to have him pretend to disband the Gu family army to lower Empress Dowager Zhuang's vigilance. In reality, he had let out a sigh of relief. Not having to inherit the Gu family army was a good thing for Gu Chongqing. If he did not sit in that position, it would not be so easy for others to target him. But things did not go as he wished. He took the 100,000 Gu family army and came to the frontier fortress as the commander of the entire army. The remnants of the previous dynasty treated traitors with outrageous methods. The old Marquis could not imagine how they would take revenge on Madame Ling's son. He would rather that Gu Chongqing had never come to the frontier fortress. He would rather die here. He would rather hand the Gu family army to Tang Yueshan and let Tang Yueshan lead it. He would rather not see Gu Chongqing expose himself to the remnants of the previous dynasty. The reason why the old Marquis felt this way was because he did not know that his other grandson and Gu Jiao had also come to the frontier fortress. They were also the children of the Marquis, and the remnants of the previous dynasty would not let them go. But the remnants of the previous dynasty hated Gu Chongqing the most. He should have been their death warrior, but he had become their enemy. On the other side of the room, Gu Chengfeng was completely dumbfounded. He was more shocked than Gu Chongqing. First of all, he did not know that his eldest brother was here. Since his eldest brother could come to the governor's mansion to visit his grandfather, why didn't he go to the wounded barracks to see him? Secondly, he thought that his mother was angered to death by Madame Ling. Later, Madame Ling's injustice was cleared. He thought that his mother really died of illness. But now he was told that his mother was forced to commit suicide? Also, since his mother was a spy of the previous dynasty, then he was half a spy. Hearing this, Gu Jiao combined it with her dream. Many mysteries were solved. No wonder she felt that the remnants of the previous dynasty were taking revenge on the Gu family. It turned out that they were punishing Madame Ling's betrayal. First, they cut off the heads of Gu Chengfeng and the old Marquis. Then they destroyed the Gu family army and cut off Gu Chongqing's legs. Madame Ling could not rest in peace in the netherworld. Look at what became of the son you refused to hand over. And look at the Gu family army you failed to take down for us. They all became corpses. You can't get them, so you destroy them. You are so sick. Tang Yueshan was the last person to dig his ear out of the wall. To be honest, he was also very shocked. He had never expected that the Marquis Ding, and who seemed to be well behaved, would create such a big mess. What was wrong with him and his sister-in-law crawling in the dust? What was wrong with Tang Ming being dissolute and domineering outside? Was there someone who married a spy and gave birth to 3 little spies that were so sinful? Tang Yueshan suddenly felt that his image was unprecedentedly glorious. He thanked his colleagues for setting him off. After the shock passed, Tang Yueshan began to make his own plans. When he went back to the Empress Dowager and His Majesty to report 1, 2, or 3 little spies from the previous dynasty, how much merit could he obtain? As soon as this thought flashed through his mind, Tang Yueshan felt a little cold on his forehead. He came back to his senses and looked carefully. He saw Gu Jiao standing in front of him with a huge needle in her hand. He turned pale with fright and his body trembled. "What are you doing?" Gu Jiao pushed the syringe with her thumb. "Injecting, poisoning you." Tang Yueshan. The newest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642/826428267 HTML Genius 1 second. Remember this website address: www.zhbqg.com. Biku Gur mobile reading website zhbqg.com. Chapter 507. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more frequently. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that you can't find online. Tang Yueshan was so scared that he almost rolled off the bamboo bed. Did she have to be so cruel? She gave him an injection again. She gave him such a thick and long needle. Was she sure that wasn't an injection for a pig? Tang Yueshan was not afraid of being poisoned, but he was afraid of injections. It was an indescribable fear. Tang Yueshan's mouth twitched. He said sarcastically, "We're comrades who fought side by side. Is this how you treat me?" What happened to the basic trust between people? Fed to the dogs. Gu Jiao said unabashedly, "I was being extra generous. I was going to poison you." Tang Yueshan was speechless again. How did this girl know that he was going to snitch? Did he write that he was going to snitch on them and ask for credit? Tang Yueshan glared at Gu Jiao in exasperation. Then he thought of something and frowned. "Wait, didn't you already poison me? My life is in your hands. Why do you have to poison me?" Gu Jiao blinked. Tang Yueshan suddenly sat up straight. "You didn't poison me." Gu Jiao said seriously, "I did." Tang Yueshan, "You didn't." Gu Jiao, "I did." Tang Yueshan, "I don't believe you." Gu Jiao rolled her eyes. "Then I'm going to poison you." Tang Yueshan, who could not be corrupted by wealth and power, finally succumbed to the needle and promised that he would never tell anyone what he heard today. However, Gu Jiao did not buy it. A man's mouth is a liar. Tang Yueshan was confused. Where did she learn all this nonsense from? Tang Yueshan was furious. Although all was fair in war, he was not that cunning in private. He was not as shameless as Marquis Xian Ping. Tang Yueshan was a little angry, but he said seriously, "I'm the Grand Marshal of the world. I promised to keep your mouth shut, so I will keep my promise. Why don't you believe me?" "It's not impossible for me to believe you." Gu Jiao rubbed his chin and looked Tang Yueshan up and down. Tang Yueshan felt an inexplicable sense of foreboding. What are you going to do?" Gu Jiao crossed her arms and gently tapped her arm with her fingertips. She cast a sidelong glance at him and said, "If you become my little henchman, I'll believe you and won't poison you." Tang Yueshan was puzzled. "What's a minion?" Gu Jiao said, "Little brother." Tang Yueshan could not believe his ears. What did the girl just say? Little brother? Him? Huh? He was the Grand Marshal of the world. Why would he be a little girl's little brother? This girl must have either gone crazy, or she must have been scared silly by the fact that Marquis Ding and Fu had spies. Although she was not Madame Ling's child, she was still of the Marquis Fu's bloodline. When the nest is overturned, there are no eggs left intact. Marquis Ding and Fu had been accused of treason. Where could she go unharmed? She would probably fall out of favor with both the Emperor and the Empress Dowager. TSK. Without the protection of these two, how would this girl survive in the future? Gu Jiao sternly said, "You choose. Poison you mute, or become my little brother." Tang Yueshan coldly smiled. "Girl, how about I give you a suggestion? If you become my disciple, I will consider not killing you when I return to the capital." Tang Ming was his son, but if this girl became his disciple, then she could be considered half a daughter. If a daughter hurt a son, then it was a family matter. The family law was enough. There was no need to shout about killing. He was not like Gu Chao, that stubborn old man, who valued boys over girls. He had also carefully cultivated his own daughter. Unfortunately, they did not have the talent to practice martial arts. This girl was too talented. He cherished talent. As long as this girl was obedient, he could guarantee that he would cultivate her the same way he had cultivated Tang Ming in the past. To be honest, if it weren't for this incident, Tang Yueshan would never have allowed Gu Jiao to acknowledge him as her master. It was one thing for him to admire Gu Jiao's talent, but it was another thing for him to not be able to overcome the hurdle in his heart. However, the relationship between people was like an unpredictable game. No one knew which side would gain the upper hand in the next moment. It was very clear that with him heavily injured and Gu Jiao and Gu Chongqing at full strength, his chances of winning were not high. In order to live, he had to make a sacrifice, but a simple sacrifice made him unwilling. If he could take advantage of the sacrifice, then he would not feel so aggrieved. Or he would never admit that he coveted this girl. Gu Chao did not want her, but he did. Gu Chengfeng was completely immersed in his great shock. He was so stunned that he did not hear a word that Gu Jiao and Tang Yueshan were saying. Until Gu Chongqing came out of the room next door. When he passed by the door, he accidentally heard Tang Yueshan's voice. He opened the door and looked at the three people inside. He was surprised. "Why are you here?" This time, Gu Chengfeng reacted. When he saw Gu Chongqing, the grievance in his heart surged like a tide. His little mouth twitched. "Big brother!" He walked out of bed with red eyes and planned to throw himself at his big brother. Unexpectedly, he was entangled with Tang Yueshan's bandage. Tang Yueshan felt pain in his leg and instinctively pulled the bandage away. Gu Chengfeng was pulled back by a strong force. He lost his balance and fell backward. Not only did he knock Tang Yueshan down, but he also knocked down the wall made of pear wood behind Tang Yueshan. The two wounded soldiers fell into the next room in a sorry state and rolled all over the floor. The old duke looked at the two people who broke through the wall and frowned. Gu Chengfeng's arm was bandaged, but his leg was not. He endured the pain and stood up from the pile of planks. He looked at the old duke, whom he had not seen for days. The old marquis also looked in his direction, revealing a look of surprise and excitement. Gu Chengfeng was slightly stunned. "Grandfather is so excited to see me? Grandfather's favorite grandson is me." Gu Chengfeng was ecstatic. The haze of knowing that he was half a spy was swept away. He walked to his grandfather with tears in his eyes. He came to the bedside. He looked at his grandfather with tears in his eyes. Before he could finish the word, his grandfather pushed him away with his arm that was stuck to the splint. The old duke looked at Gu Chengfeng's back with great excitement. "Little brother." Gu Chengfeng. Little brother? Tang Yueshan, half buried under the planks, looked behind him. Where did this little brother come from? Gu Jiao had already put on her mask. She also looked at the old duke with great excitement. She strode over to the bed, sat down, and held his hand. "Big brother." The old duke's eyes were full of tears. "Little brother." Gu Jiao. "Big brother." The old duke held Gu Jiao's hand and cried. "Little brother. It's really you. I thought I would never see you again in this life. It's so good to see you again in this life." Gu Chengfeng and Tang Yueshan finally understood who he was calling little brother. They vomited blood. Digression. Xiao Feng. I treated you as a sister, but you secretly became my granduncle. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that you can't find online. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_826/1093389562. HTML Genius memorized the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 508. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet are all available here. Gu Chengfeng's heart suffered 100,000 critical hits. Vomiting blood could not alleviate the symptoms. He wished he could empty himself and sacrifice his life. It was literally an act of utter sacrifice. He wanted to rub himself on the ground to see if it was true. His sister and his grandfather became sworn brothers. Then what was he? This girl came to the frontier fortress to save a brother of hers. Was she talking about his grandfather? She really had a brother. No, she said there was a fool. Gu Chengfeng choked and looked at himself in horror. He could not move his right arm, and then looked at Tang Yueshan, who could not move his left leg. The fool must be Tang Yueshan. No refuting. Tang Yueshan looked at Gu Chengfeng and frowned. Why is this boy looking at me strangely? In the next room, Gu Chongqing, who saw the scene of the brothers recognizing each other, almost could not hold it in any more. Although he had long known about this matter, the time when the old marquis was drunk and called Gu Jiao brothers, he and Gu Yen were next door. He was the one who sent the unconscious old marquis onto the carriage back to the residence. However, he thought she was just teasing his drunk grandfather. He really did not expect this girl to be addicted to the game and recognize her brother in the frontier fortress. Too naughty. Gu Chongqing looked at his grandfather and Gu Jiao with a complicated expression. One dared to shout and the other dared to respond. The old duke and his brother recognized each other excitedly. From the moment he saw Gu Jiao, there was no room for anyone else in his eyes. Gu Chengfeng, who was standing next to him, was completely ignored. Gu Chengfeng, who was forgotten by his elder brother and then ignored by his grandfather, felt bitter in his heart, but he did not say it. After that, Gu Jiao and the old duke chatted as if there was no one else around. The old duke wiped his tears and asked with relief and emotion, "Little brother, why did you come to the frontier fortress?" Gu Jiao took out a small notebook, found a brush and wrote, "I came to save you." The old duke was overwhelmed with emotion and his eyes filled with tears again. Little brother was so righteous. He would remember this kindness and would never forget it for the rest of his life. Suddenly, a vague memory appeared in his mind. He remembered that after he was thrown into the wine cellar by the remnants of the previous dynasty, he seemed to have seen someone come to save him. "Was it you, little brother? Did you save me from Lingguan?" There seemed to be something else, but he could not remember it. Forget it. Forget it. Things that I can't remember aren't important. Gu Chengfeng, grandfather, and me too. And me. I also went to save you. Why do you only remember that brat? Gu Chengfeng was driven mad. I think we went to a family's house? Or did we went to a cave? The old marquis tried his best to search through his memories. He felt that there was something else in his memories, but he still couldn't remember it. Tang Yueshan, my goodness, you don't even remember this marshal. This marshal carried you all the way from the wooden house to the cave. My fingers got frostbite from carrying you. My injuries. Were you also the one who treated them, right? The old duke's gratitude and excitement could not be described with words. He patted Gu Jiao's hand and said in a choked voice, "I, Gu Chao, have done two things correctly in my life. One was to establish the Gu army, and the other was to get to know you, little brother." Gu Jiao held his hand tightly and nodded deeply and solemnly. Brothers will walk together for life. After that, the old duke was concerned about Gu Jiao's injuries. He was relieved when he learned that Gu Jiao was fine. Gu Chengfeng, no, when Big Brother came in, you didn't even care if he was injured. As the old duke and Gu Jiao chatted, a new injured soldier was transferred to the courtyard. A soldier accidentally fell from the bed, causing a second injury to his wound. Gu Jiao scribbled in his notebook, "I'll go take a look. I'll talk to you later." The old duke nodded. "Little brother, go do your thing." His little brother was really amazing. Not only did he know martial arts, but he also knew medicine. This was the true definition of courage and benevolence. Gu Jiao went. Gu Chengfeng straightened his back. Finally, it was his turn. He wanted to show his grandfather that he was also a brave and good soldier who guarded the border. His injuries were his most honorable medal. He smiled. "Grandfather." Huff, huff. A series of rhythmic snores answered him. Gu Chengfeng's smile gradually stiffened. After the wooden wall collapsed, Advisor Hu of the governor's office quickly had someone bring in a landscape screen. The old duke was asleep. He could only say to Tang Yueshan and the two Gu brothers in the other room, "Well, there are no carpenters who can come over for the time being. Let's use a screen to separate them first." They did not speak. Advisor Hu, Are you not satisfied with this arrangement? But he was not lying. All the carpenters in the city had been recruited to build and repair military equipment. There was really no one to repair the wall. Put it here, Gu Chongqing said. Ah, yes, yes. Advisor who asked someone to clean up the wooden planks on the floor and put the screen back in place. Then I'll take my leave. Gu Chongqing nodded slightly. Advisor who left as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. Was it an illusion? Why did the atmosphere in the room feel a bit strange? Tang Yueshan could not move his leg. He lay back on the bed. Gu Chongqing's leg was fine, but his arm hurt. He was also ordered to lie back on his bed by Gu Chongqing. At this time, the atmosphere in the room was indeed strange. It was not because Gu Jiao and the old Marquis had recognized each other as brothers, but because Gu Chongqing and Gu Changfeng had both reacted. Tang Yueshan had also seen everything that had happened today, including their mother's identity as a spy. What did this mean? It meant that if Tang Yueshan leaked the news, the whole war would be turned upside down. The Gu army would not fight for a spy from the previous dynasty. If they knew that Gu Chongqing was the descendant of a spy from the previous dynasty, they would rebel. Gu Chongqing said to Gu Changfeng, "From now on, keep an eye on him. Don't let him contact anyone. I'll tell the Jiao Jiao that all the doctors in this courtyard will be replaced by those from the Miracle Hall." Gu Changfeng curled his lips. No need. That girl plans to poison him mute. Gu Chongqing paused and said, "He can still write even if he's mute." Gu Changfeng said lightly, "Oh, then tell that girl to break his hand too. The kind that can't be seen." Tang Yueshan's heart trembled. How could you siblings be so cruel? And when did I say I was going to leak the news? Am I, Tang Yueshan, someone who doesn't care about the big picture? Can I shake the morale of the border soldiers for a little merit? I'm going to report you 3 spies to the Empress Dowager and His Majesty when I return to the capital in triumph. Gu Chongqing thought for a moment and sighed. Forget it. I'll do it. I don't want to dirty Jiao Jiao's hands. He pulled out a dagger and walked toward Tang Yueshan. Tang Yueshan trembled. At this moment, Gu Jiao Jiao returned to the room after the operation. Tang Yueshan reached out his hand to her almost without thinking. Do you still need a little henchman? Digression, / amazed face, / the latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found on the internet. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642/826/1093833793. HTML Genius memorized this site's address. www.zhhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 509. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found on the internet. The Supreme Marshal of the world's armed forces had once again fallen into Gu Jiao's hands. Since he was Gu Jiao's follower, Gu Jiao patted her chest to show that she would protect him. Okay, you can put away the dagger. It's not good to scare my follower, Gu Jiao said to Gu Chongqing. Gu Chongqing put away the dagger. Gu Chengfeng's mouth twitched. That's okay. Gu Chongqing put away the dagger so easily. Tang Yueshan was also a little dumbfounded. He felt that he had agreed too quickly. What happened? But on second thought, Gu Chongqing was a gentleman in principle, but he was not stupid. He would not put the border soldiers and civilians in prison for one person's life. If killing Tang Yueshan could save everyone, Gu Chongqing would not hesitate to kill him. This was Tang Yueshan's judgment of Gu Chongqing. And because of this, Tang Yueshan believed that Gu Chongqing really wanted to kill him. Yes, that's right. Gu Chongqing must be serious. He wasn't just scaring her. He was not that easy to scare. There was nothing to regret. A wise man submits to circumstances. A real man knows when to yield and when to stand tall. In ancient times, there was Go Jian, the king of Yu. Today, there was Tang Yueshan who recognized a thief as his brother. After the sudden recruitment ceremony, the few of them began to discuss business. In fact, Gu Chongqing had something to ask Tang Yueshan. If Tang Yueshan did not come to the governor's mansion, he planned to visit him at the wounded barracks after visiting his grandfather. Is it about the siege? Tang Yueshan asked. He was still lying on his bed. Gu Jiao put him on an 4-drip. Because he was now a little henchman, his treatment was upgraded. Gu Jiao gave him a retention needle, so he did not have to do needles every day. Gu Chongqing sat at a square table in the room. Tang Yueshan's bed was directly opposite him, and Gu Qingfeng's was on his left. They were about the same distance apart, but he chose to sit in the chair facing Tang Yueshan because he was mainly discussing business with Tang Yueshan. Gu Chengfeng could only pout and look at the side of his brother's face. He deliberately turned over and made a big commotion. Gu Chongqing was so engrossed in the discussion that he did not notice his brother's mood. He looked at Tang Yueshan and said, I plan to attack Lingguan City tomorrow evening. Tang Yueshan pondered for a moment and said with a frown, Actually, I suggest that you attack Beiyang City first. Beiyang City was the city that resisted the most fiercely back then. The reason why they resisted so fiercely was because the remnants of the previous dynasty didn't fully infiltrate the city. You're new to the frontier fortress, so you probably don't know that there's a living Buddha there. Living Buddha? Tang Yueshan nodded. Your grandfather and I only heard about it when we came here. Living Buddha gathered believers in the frontier fortress to deliver all living beings from suffering. Even the prince consort and Princess Ning An were his believers. Of course, Princess Ning An is not one now. She already knows that Living Buddha is a trick of the remnants of the previous dynasty. Unfortunately, it's too late. A large number of people took the bait and believed in Living Buddha. More than half of the remnants of the previous dynasty's army are believers of Living Buddha. Gu Chongqing suddenly understood. He murmured, No wonder they could build such a large army in the frontier fortress without being discovered. Tang Yueshan said, Living Buddha has the most believers in Yi City. That's why Yi City's resistance is the weakest among the 3 cities. Gu Chongqing asked, What about Yueqing City? Tang Yueshan shook his head. Yueqing City is too small and its strategic location is not important. The remnants of the previous dynasty did not target Yueqing City, so there are no believers of Living Buddha in the city for the time being. Gu Chengfeng curled his lips. A fake Living Buddha made them go against the imperial court. Isn't that unbelievable? Tang Yueshan said, Those devout believers are even willing to give their lives to Living Buddha. Living Buddha is here to save them from suffering. Living Buddha said that King Yi is the chosen one, the emperor sent by the heavens to set things right. When King Yi ascends the throne, the country will be prosperous and the people will have enough food and clothing. They will no longer have to suffer from hunger and cold. Gu Chengfeng did not believe in this, so he could not understand why the people would fall for such a simple trick. The lives of the people are too hard. Gu Chongqing muttered. Tang Yueshan sighed. The suffering in the frontier fortress was not something the people in the capital could imagine. The crops here were not easy to grow and the harvest was very poor. The people could not eat enough and could not afford to get sick. There seemed to be no end to these days. Why did they believe in Living Buddha? It was because they wanted to be reborn in paradise and not suffer anymore. It sounded stupid at first, but after thinking about it carefully, how could it not be sad? Gu Chongqing said, There are plague victims in Lingguan City. If we attack too late, I'm worried that they will attack the people in the city with plague. Tang Yueshan was startled. What? There's such a thing? Gu Chongqing said, Jiao Jiao heard this when she went to the governor's office in Lingguan City last time. Gu Chengfeng widened his eyes and said suspiciously, "No, I also went to the governor's office in Lingguan City. Why didn't I hear this news?" Gu Chongqing gave him an indescribable look. "Sister is better than you. Gu Chengfeng. How could he lose to her in this? He was with that girl all the time. He had never heard of the plague." Gu Chengfeng looked at Gu Jiao, who was always giving him an 4 drip. He was about to ask Gu Jiao when she heard Gu Jiao sighed softly. "Told you not to be distracted. Gu Chengfeng, is the news reliable?" Tang Yueshan asked. Gu Chongqing nodded. "We went to see the plague victims. We also killed the men of sacrifice guarding them and left them with medicine. The remnants of the previous dynasty send them food every day, but they don't go in to check because they are afraid of being infected. A patient called Little Shetu is pretending to be a man of sacrifice and lives in the middle room. However, we don't know how long he can hide. So what I'm saying is that we attack Lingguan City as soon as possible. The consequences of the plague were not as terrible as any war. If the remnants of the previous dynasty found out something was wrong, they would release the patients in anger or kill them and spread their clothes and blood to the people in the city. Lingguan City would be in danger." Tang Yueshan's face darkened. Although he knew that the remnants of the previous dynasty were a group of bad people, he didn't expect them to use such despicable means. It seemed that they had to attack Lingguan City first. "Can the plague really be cured?" Tang Yueshan asked. In Tang Yueshan's impression, the plague was usually not quelled by treatment. The victims of the plague were quarantined and died. Only when no more people were infected would the plague be considered to be over. Only Gu Jiao could answer this question. Gu Jiao hung the 4 drip on the hook at the head of the bed and said, "It can be cured. However, it's best not to let too many people get infected. I'm afraid that there won't be enough medicine." She had been overdosed in the past few days. She didn't know if it was her imagination, but the medicine box didn't seem to be shining again. It was as if the box had been emptied. "This girl can even cure the plague." Tang Yueshan clutched his chest. What's with this sudden sense of pride? What's the relationship between the remnants of the previous dynasty and the Chen army? Gu Chongqing continued to ask. Tang Yueshan said, "They are not completely united. On one hand, there are certain differences in the distribution of benefits. On the other hand, there are differences in the methods they use to fight the enemy." "For example?" Gu Chongqing looked at him. Tang Yueshan said with a hint of sarcasm, "For example, the Chen army wanted the remnants of the previous dynasty to hand over Princess Ning En. They wanted to use her to threaten the soldiers at the border, but the emperor's son-in-law stopped them." Gu Chengfeng chuckled. "Is the emperor's son-in-law true to Princess Ning En? Then why did he destroy her country?" Tang Yueshan squinted at him. "What do you know? An ambitious man will not be willing to be the emperor's son-in-law without real power. Besides, he is a member of the royal family of the previous dynasty. It is his mission to restore the country." Gu Chongqing asked, "What about the emperor's uncle, Prince Yi?" Tang Yueshan said, "He also wants to hand Princess Ning En over to the Chen army. However, the emperor's son-in-law's desire is too strong. The emperor's son-in-law has a good reputation at the border. Therefore, Prince Yi hasn't fallen out with his nephew yet. When your grandfather wanted to rescue Princess Ning En, I didn't support him because I felt that strategically speaking, if Princess Ning En was in the emperor's son-in-law's hands, there would always be a crack in the relationship between the 3 parties. However, if Princess Ning En was gone, they would be completely united." Gu Chengfeng sat up. "But what if Prince Yi killed Princess Ning, and in order to cut the Gordian knot?" Tang Yueshan sighed. "Your grandfather thought so. That's why he went to rescue her regardless of his own safety." Tang Yueshan didn't agree with the old Marquis's decision, but he couldn't stop him. After all, the old Marquis had the Emperor's order. The Emperor had ordered him to bring Princess Ning En back unharmed, so he had to bring her back. Gu Chengfeng snorted and lay back on the bed. "If you send more people, maybe my grandfather won't be in trouble." Tang Yueshan shook his head. It won't help even if they go. This is what I found out when I was hiding after the defeat. The Emperor's son-in-law has a very powerful death warrior by his side. Even the 3 dragon shadow guards sent by concubine Jing to protect Princess Ning and were no match for him, let alone the soldiers under my command. Your grandfather's martial arts aren't weak, so he has a chance of winning against the dragon shadow guards. However, it's hard to say if 3 dragon shadow guards attack at the same time. Is he that powerful? Gu Chengfeng was surprised. Gu Jiao quietly closed the medicine box. Was this death warrior the same one who cut off Gu Chongqing's legs in the dream? If he could defeat 3 dragon shadow guards, then it was no wonder he could plot against Gu Chongqing. However, from the looks of it, Gu Chongqing's combat strength wasn't weak. Otherwise, he could have killed Gu Chongqing in the open. What are you thinking about? Gu Chongqing asked Gu Jiao after they came out of the room. It's snowing again. Gu Jiao stood in the corridor and looked at the swirling snowflakes. It's a good time to march. I wonder when it'll stop. It would be better to fight after the snow stopped. 7 o'clock, Gu Jiao said. You know how to read the sky? Gu Chongqing looked at her in surprise. Gu Jiao nodded without changing her expression. Yes, a little. Gu Chongqing smiled softly. He took off his cloak and put it on Gu Jiao. His slender but calloused fingers tied the ribbon of the cloak for Gu Jiao. Gu Chengfeng's ahut bed was facing the main door. He lay on the bed and looked sourly at the scene of his elder brother putting on a cloak for Gu Jiao. He snorted and turned his body heavily. He didn't want to talk to his brother anymore. Tang Yueshan's thunderous snoring came from the room. Gu Chengfeng was upset. He covered his head with a quilt and stuffed his ears with cotton. However, as a martial artist, his hearing was too strong. Tang Yueshan's snoring was like thunder in his ears. Gu Chengfeng didn't know whether he was more angry at his brother for ignoring him or at Tang Yueshan's snoring. Humph. You're all pissing me off. Fine. When I recover, I'll go back to the capital. I'll never come to this damned place again. What damned place? A familiar voice sounded beside his bed. Gu Chengfeng shuddered and froze. Why are you covering your head with the quilt? Don't you feel stuffy? Gu Chongqing reached out and pulled Gu Chengfeng's quilt down slowly. Gu Chengfeng resisted weakly, but he didn't have much strength. He looked at his brother who suddenly came back. His grievance multiplied. He knew he wasn't that good, but he tried his best. His brother praised all the soldiers who defended the city, but he didn't. He wasn't bad. He changed from a scholar to a soldier who killed enemies. He didn't retreat, abandon the city, or run away. Actually, he also felt that it was very difficult and bitter. After all, he had not suffered since he was young. He wasn't used to it at all. But he endured it. He didn't complain at all. Why couldn't his brother see his efforts? Does it still hurt? Gu Chongqing asked. Humph. Now you care about me. It's too late. Gu Chengfeng awkwardly moved in. Why aren't you praising me? Why aren't you praising me? There's something I want to give you. Gu Chongqing said softly. It must be that girl who chose the leftovers. I don't care. What is it? Gu Chengfeng lowered his voice and asked in a low voice. Look for yourself. Gu Chongqing placed something tied with a string above his head. Gu Chengfeng still didn't turn around to look at Gu Chongqing. He coldly pulled that thing down with his hand. He casually glanced at it. Just a glance, and then his entire body froze. He almost instinctively sat up and looked at the small token in his hand in disbelief. His name, birthday, and place of birth were written on it. And on the back of the small token, there was a large Gu character. This is... He jumped down with a swoosh. With a limp arm, he looked at his brother. Gu Chongqing also looked at him. His expression was solemn. His eyes revealed the unyielding spirit of a soldier, the Gu family army's wooden token. From today onwards, you are a true Gu family army soldier. You must be loyal to His Majesty and do your best for the people. You must abide by military orders, punish evil, and protect the country and the people. You must also protect every river in the country of Zhao. You must protect every inch of the country of Zhao. If the enemy invades, they can only step over your corpse. Gu Chengfeng's chest swelled. His eyes were red and hot tears rolled down. He straightened his body and solemnly swore, Gu family army Gu Changfeng accepts. The newest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found online are all here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/10936670. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gur mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 510. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that can't be found online here. The Gu army had been preparing to attack the city since yesterday. However, other than Gu Chongqing and a few others, no one knew which city they were going to attack. According to the information obtained by the Gu army scouts, the Chen army predicted that Gu Chongqing would take the lead to attack Beiyang City. At this moment, Yi City had already begun to send reinforcements to Beiyang City. That's good. Lingguan City's 30,000 troops are no match for us. In the tent, the right commander said, moreover, Beiyang City is further away from Lingguan City than Yi City. If the Chen army really goes to Beiyang City, then even if they realize that they've been tricked, they won't be able to turn around and reinforce Lingguan City in time. Gu Chongqing looked at the cities on the sand table and estimated the distance between them. Beiyang City, Lingguan City, Yuegu City, and Yi City happened to occupy the top, north, south, left, west, right, and east directions. Beiyang City was in the north, far away from Lingguan City in the south. However, Beiyang City was not that far from Yuegu City in the west. If they realized that they had been tricked, the first thing they would do would not be to reinforce Lingguan City, but to lead the army to attack Yuegu City. After explaining his analysis, the left and right commanders disagreed on how many troops to send. The right commander said, "We'll go all out and get rid of them as quickly as possible. Then, we'll rush back. We might not be slower than the Chen army." The left commander said, "Yuegu City is a total of 80 miles from Lingguan City. Yuegu City is also 80 miles from Beiyang City. As long as we attack the city, Beiyang City will receive a messenger pigeon. How long will it take to attack the city? When that time comes, it will be too late for us to turn back." The right commander said passionately, "Then let's fight another battle. Take back Yuegu City." The left commander said seriously, "But the people in the city will suffer the flames of war, and the injured soldiers and defenders will also be slaughtered." The right commander fell silent. Although his fighting style was aggressive, he did not ignore the lives of the people and the border soldiers. Gu Chongqing did not say anything. Today, he had asked advisor Hu and Governor Cheng about the topography of this area. He knew that Yuegu City was indeed the same distance to Beiyang City and Lingguan City. However, compared to Yuegu City, Lingguan City's topography was higher while Beiyang City's topography was lower. They came down the mountain while the Chen Kingdom's army came up the mountain. First of all, their speed was different. As long as they attacked the city fast enough, they would be able to meet the Chen nation's army outside Moonwood City. Therefore, he was now faced with two choices. He could go all out and quickly take down Lingguan City before rushing back to fight with the Chen nation's army. Or, he could leave a portion of his people in Yuelu City and start a war on both sides. If it was the second option, it would involve the question of how many soldiers the Chen Kingdom's army would deploy. Was it 30,000 or 50,000? In the end, Gu Chongqing chose to leave a portion of his forces in ancient Moon City. After all, if the soldiers were to rush back and forth, their combat strength would not be able to keep up. It would be better for the two cities to attack at the same time. The soldiers of ancient Moon City would be able to rest and wait for the exhausted soldiers. They might not have the advantage in terms of numbers, but they would definitely be better in terms of combat power. Gu Chongqing paused and said, "Also, it's not necessarily because they don't have the advantage in numbers. Beiyang City and Yi City need to be guarded by soldiers. They are also afraid that if we take down Lingguan City, we will immediately attack Beiyang City or Yi City. Currently, the two cities have a total of 80,000 soldiers. Each city needs at least 20,000 soldiers, so the maximum number of soldiers they can deploy is 40,000. After discussing with Tang Yueshan and his grandfather, the three of them agreed to leave 30,000 soldiers of the Gu clan to deal with the Chen nation's army. The rest of the troops that could be deployed would follow Gu Chongqing to attack Lingguan City. Injuries would occur at any time during a war, so it was necessary to have a doctor accompanying them. This time, there were actually many skilled doctors from the common people in the medical team. However, in the midst of the flames of war, danger lurked everywhere. Gu Chongqing only chose 20 people from the imperial court's medical officials. Gu Jiao was in the ranks of the team, but not as a doctor. She had to inform the patients in the stronghold to evacuate. Although she had told little Shertu that it would be fine to have someone deliver the news and that little Shertu would take the people to evacuate. However, how could Gu Jiao let a group of patients escape in the ice and snow? Lives would be lost. Gu Chengfeng had just been officially appointed as a member of the Gu clan's army. He was so excited that he felt like 10,000 ants had crawled into his heart. He tossed and turned in bed, occasionally laughing foolishly and directly waking Tang Yueshan up. Tang Yueshan used to scare Steamed Bun when he first saw him, but now he was very calm. This kid's brain was damaged. He would have at least 7 or 8 spasms a day. Gu Chengfeng wasn't even in the mood to eat dinner. He was only thinking about attacking Lingguan City. He felt that he was part of the Gu clan's army and couldn't sit idly by. He also had to go to war. He decisively removed the bandage on his arm and strode out. Before he could take a step out, he was blocked by Dr. Song. Dr. Song said impartially, "Miss Gu said that no one is allowed to leave this room." "I'm not afraid of you. Do you want to give me an injection? Come on, come on." Gu Chengfeng directly showed his butt to him. Dr. Song said expressionlessly, "I'll deduct a bottle of hair growth medicine from you." Gu Chengfeng felt as if he had been struck by lightning. Recently, he had been so busy fighting that he had forgotten about the hair growth medicine. Gu Chengfeng, who was not afraid of anything and was not afraid of injections, finally bowed down for a bottle of hair growth medicine. After dinner, Gu Chongqing led the Gu clan's army to set out. The left commander and 30,000 Gu clan soldiers stayed behind in Yueqing City. The wind and snow filled the sky and the road was dangerous. After a whole night of trekking, the Gu clan's army finally arrived near Lingguan City. At this time, the heavy snow had not stopped, and the army was resting in a mountain forest. Gu Chongqing gave the order to set up a barracks and rest there. Lingguan City was on the east side of the mountain, and they were on the west side of the mountain. With the thick wind and snow covering them, even if they started a fire, they wouldn't be discovered. Gu Jiao was ready to go find little Shertu. The brother and sister had already discussed the details of this matter. Considering the overall situation, Gu Chongqing couldn't leave the team before the battle, but he had the shadow guards accompanying him. He handed over all 6 shadow guards to Gu Jiao. Early on, before they set off, Gu Jiao picked a few women in Yueqing City who knew acupuncture and took them to make a few sets of protective clothing out of oiled paper. There was no need to trouble them with gloves and masks, as there were many in the small medicine box. She was the only one who used goggles, but in a while, she would put on masks for the plague patients, so it wasn't a big problem. Gu Chongqing looked at Gu Jiao, who was carrying the small medicine box and the red tasseled spear, and asked, "Are you leaving?" Gu Jiao nodded. "After taking them to a safe place, I'll meet you." "Okay." Gu Chongqing looked at her fixedly. There was the worry and reluctance of a brother in his eyes, but at the same time, he also understood Gu Jiao's ability. He tidied her hair and said, "Take care of yourself." "I will." If she didn't take care, she wouldn't have any small benefits. Because they had to pass through the checkpoint, they didn't ride horses. The shadow guards used Qinggong to bring Gu Jiao back and forth in the night. After about half an hour, the group arrived at their destination. Gu Jiao stood outside the wooden bridge and took out gloves, masks, and temporary protective clothing from the small basket on her back. She helped them put them on neatly one by one. She was also fully dressed. One of the shadow guards was going to scout ahead. Gu Jiao called out to him, "I'll go first. You guys wait for me here." The shadow guards nodded in unison. Gu Jiao first went to the death soldier's small wooden hut and gently knocked on the door. There was the sound of someone getting up from inside the hut. His movements were quick, and it sounded very vigilant. Gu Jiao secretly nodded. Little Shitu's vigilance was quite good. "It's me," she whispered. "Dr. Gu." Shan Xian hurriedly opened the door for her. Gu Jiao flashed in and left the door ajar. Using the thin moonlight that came in through the crack of the door, she asked him, "Did you take your medicine on time these past 2 days?" Yes. Shan Xian hurriedly nodded. "I feel much better." "What about the others?" Gu Jiao asked. Shan Xian said, "They also took their medicine on time. Most of them are getting better like me, but there are also some who don't have any changes." "There's no effect?" Gu Jiao frowned strangely and said, "The effect of the medicine varies between individuals. Let's observe for another 2 days. If it really doesn't work, I'll give them another medicine." Last time, she had left behind streptomycin and a sulfonamide. In a while, she would see if there was tetracycline or chloramphenicol in the small medicine box. Gu Jiao said to Shan Xian, "Let's not talk about this for now. Lingguan City is about to go to war. I'll take you guys away first." Shan Xian waved his hand. "Dr. Gu, you should leave quickly. I'll take them to hide in the mountains. I guarantee that no one will find us." Gu Jiao looked at him and said, "They have hunting dogs. It'll be easy to find you guys." "Ah." Shan Xian was shocked. Gu Jiao said seriously, "There's not much time left. Let's leave quickly." Shan Xian did not dare to delay any longer. He woke up the patients one by one. They did not expect that Gu Jiao would really come back to save them. Originally, they only had 20% hope in their hearts, but now it was 50%. Gu Jiao put on a mask for each of them and brought them across the bridge. However, Gu Jiao did not leave herself. Instead, she said to a few hidden guards, "You guys escort them safely to safety." "You're not leaving?" Shan Xian asked. Gu Jiao said indifferently, "I'll leave in a while." It was almost dawn. The Chen country's soldiers would come to deliver breakfast. They needed someone to pretend to be a death soldier and knock on the door. Otherwise, once they found that everyone in the stronghold had disappeared, they would guess that the Gu army had come. The whereabouts of the Gu army could not be exposed in advance. Digression. It's almost the end of the month. Can I vote for Jiao Jiao? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that you can't find online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642-89642-826/1093655157. HTML Genius remembers this site's address in a second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile reading website, zhbqg.com. Chapter 5:11. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, Please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet are available here. Shen Xian understood and said to Gu Jiao, "No, Dr. Gu, I'll stay here. You go first." Gu Jiao said, "You're not fast enough. You won't be able to catch up with us in a while, and you won't be able to understand the signals left along the way." Shen Xian was speechless. "Let's go," Gu Jiao said. Shen Xian reluctantly agreed. Then he thought of something and asked Gu Jiao, "Where are we going?" Gu Jiao said, "To find a safe place to settle you down." "What about our families?" a man in his early 30s asked. Gu Jiao looked at him and said, "The masters of the Gu army have already sneaked into the city. They will be brought out before the war." "Can we go home after the war?" another patient asked. He was the oldest one among them. He was 40 years old this year. He used to be a minister, surnamed Zhao. Gu Jiao looked at him. When she put on the mask for him, Gu Jiao noticed that his body temperature was higher than the others, and his symptoms were more serious. Gu Jiao didn't answer him in a hurry. Instead, she asked, "You're the one who didn't get better after taking the medicine?" "Ah." Minister Zhao was stunned. Obviously, he didn't understand why the topic suddenly changed so quickly. Gu Jiao didn't have time to carefully find the reason why he didn't get better. She just said to him, "You can't go home until you recover." Minister Zhao asked, "Recover? How long will that take?" Gu Jiao crossed her arms and said, "Let's see how fast you recover." Minister Zhao's face suddenly changed. There were 13 patients locked here. After eliminating the men of sacrifice, there were 12 people left. Among the 12 people, except for Minister Zhao, who didn't get better, the other symptoms were more or less better than before. Although they were anxious to go back to see their families, they knew in their hearts that they had the plague. If they didn't recover, it would inevitably harm their families. More importantly, they saw the light of recovery. Squire Zhao didn't think so. He suddenly took a few steps back and walked onto the wooden bridge. He looked at Gu Jiao warily. "Your medicine is completely ineffective. If we don't recover, will we be locked up by you for the rest of our lives?" Gu Jiao's fingertips lightly tapped on the arm that she was hugging. She looked at him indifferently and said, "When the battle at Lingguan City is over, I will change your medicine." "What if the other medicines don't work? What if you can't cure me? What if you just want to lure us out?" Shen Xian frowned. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Dr. Gu was sent by the imperial court. That day, she came together with the Gu family army's young master. "Didn't you see it with your own eyes? It's not like we've seen the real Gu family army. Who knew if she was telling the truth? He might be a fake young master. She did it to lure us out and kill us." As he spoke, he looked at the patients. "The plague can't be cured. Her medicine can only alleviate the symptoms, but in the end, we will still die." She knew. She was a doctor. She knew everything. She just wanted to lure us out. She wanted us to infect Prince Yi's soldiers. She wanted to throw us into Prince Yi's army camp. As soon as he said this, the patients immediately became jittery. Shan Xian's brows furrowed even tighter. He looked at him anxiously, then looked at his companions, who were obviously on high alert, and said in disappointment, "Dr. Gu is not that kind of person." Squire Zhao mocked, "How do you know she's not that kind of person? Are you familiar with her? Or, have you been bribed by her?" Shan Xian said angrily, "Zhao, don't slander me. It's fine if you don't leave." Gu Jiao said calmly, "Leave the corpses behind." The patients' expressions changed abruptly. Squire Zhao pointed at Gu Jiao. "Good. The fox's tail has been revealed. You're here to kill." Gu Jiao ignored him. She took the armor from the hidden guard's hands and calmly walked onto the wooden bridge. She said to the patients behind her, "Who wants to stay?" The 6 shadow guards unsheathed their cold swords at the same time. The patients were so scared that they shrank their necks. People were like that. If they could live a little longer, they would not choose to die immediately. Squire Zhao saw Gu Zhao walking towards him with a weapon longer than him on her back. His heart inexplicably jumped. The moment Gu Zhao approached, he rushed out. He hid behind Little Shatu and Shen Xian. Gu Zhao didn't intend to lay a finger on Squire Zhao, but Squire Zhao was so scared. "Dr. Gu, take care." One of the hidden guards cupped his hands towards Gu Zhao's back. Gu Zhao did not turn back. She just casually waved her right hand. The group of people left under the escort of the hidden guards. Because of the heavy snow, the footprints on the ground were quickly covered by the snow. Gu Zhao sat in the small wooden hut with her eyes closed. At the first glimmer of dawn, 2 soldiers from the previous dynasty came over with food and medicine. Gu Zhao knocked on the door 3 times from the inside. The 2 soldiers left in relief. After they walked away, Gu Zhao brought the food into the house and put it away. She also disposed of the medicine and poured it away. At noon, the 2 soldiers came again. They first took away a few boxes of food and then put down new boxes. Gu Zhao handled the food and medicine as usual without leaving a trace. Gu Zhao could have left at this time. After all, if nothing unexpected happened, the soldiers would not come again until dinner time. At that time, the Gu family's army would have already launched an attack on Lingguan City. It did not matter if the matter in the stronghold was discovered or not. However, to be cautious, Gu Zhao still stayed until dinner time. When the soldiers from the previous dynasty came to deliver dinner, she killed them. Gu Zhao took off the protective clothing and put on the armor. She carried the small basket and the red tasseled spear and followed the secret signal along the way. Gu Zhao found them in the forest where the Gu family's army had been stationed. They were arranged in a tent and were guarded by 6 hidden guards. When they came over, the Gu family's army had not yet left. They saw the uniform army and also saw the Zhao country's flag and the Gu family's army flag. Their anxious hearts finally returned to their stomachs. It was good that it was the real Gu family's army. The Gu family's army would not trap the common people and be unjust. The official surnamed Zhao was sitting on a mat in the tent. He was coughing so badly that blood came out of his mask. Gu Zhao left the red tasseled spear outside and lifted the curtain to walk over. Dr. Gu. Little Shatu, Shen Xian, stood up and looked at her in surprise. She had taken off the protective clothing and was wearing dark armor. It was different from the silver armor of the Gu family's army, but she had an inexplicably strong aura. Shen Xian only looked at her and his heart was excited. Gu Zhao nodded to him and walked in front of official Zhao. She knelt down on one knee to check his condition. She first took his pulse and then took out a stethoscope to listen to the sound of his lungs. After listening, Gu Zhao frowned and looked at him. "Did you really take the medicine?" Official Zhao's eyes flashed. Shen Xian quickly noticed his panic and said in disbelief, "You didn't take the medicine?" Official Zhao coughed up blood and almost couldn't speak. Gu Zhao used her gloved hand to take off his bloody mask and put it in the basket lined with craft paper. She coldly said, "Why didn't you take the medicine?" Official Zhao had a high fever and said dizzily, Who knows if you gave me poison?" Shen Xian said in exasperation, "Aren't you being too paranoid? If it's poison, can we all get better?" Official Zhao only realized whether he was getting better or not after a long journey. Everyone was locked up in the stronghold. Shen Xian said that he was much better and didn't feel so uncomfortable. The others also said so. However, official Zhao felt that it might be a psychological effect and that he might not really be recovering. However, just now, he had collapsed on the road several times, but the other patients were almost as strong as normal people. Even little Gua, who didn't have such obvious effects, could keep up with the group. He knew that he had misunderstood Gu Zhao. That was the real medicine that could cure the plague. Unfortunately, he realized it too late. He was going to die. He couldn't breathe. Official Zhao's breathing was choked. His face quickly turned blue and purple, and his body stiffened. After a while, he began to convulse. Gu Jiao quickly broke off a wooden stick from the pile of firewood and stuffed it into his mouth. Then, she quickly pressed on his ranzhong, higu, neiguan, and other acupuncture points until his body stopped convulsing. Gu Jiao took his temperature and found that he had a high fever of 40 degrees. In this situation, the possibility of lowering his temperature physically was not high. He was unconscious and couldn't be fed medicine. Dr. Gu, can he still be saved? Little Shi asked in a low voice. I don't know. Gu Jiao frowned. This was the truth. The death rate of the plague was very high, and he didn't cooperate with treatment. Now, he could only resign himself to fate. Gu Jiao gave him an injection. First, she gave him an antipyretic injection and then replaced the infusion bottle with streptomycin. Just as Gu Jiao was about to find a shelf to hang the infusion bottle, Official Zhao suddenly woke up. He felt that his arm was cold. He looked carefully and was so shocked that he reached out to pull it out. What did you do to me? Gu Jiao was on an infusion. Little Shi rushed over to hold him down, but it was too late. A stream of blood spurted out and splattered all over Gu Jiao's face. It dripped from her goggles and onto her mask. She smelled the strong scent of blood. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. All the novels that can't be found online are available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642/826/109340591. HTML Genius memorized the website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 512. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found online are all available here. Gu Jiao's mood almost instinctively became violent. The goggles turned blood red, as if the entire world had turned blood red. The heat of the blood seeped through the mask and burned her cheeks. The violent factor in her body began to surge endlessly. Everyone was dumbfounded. Squire Zhao was a plague patient. His blood was also sick. Dr. Gu, the hidden guards outside the tent heard the movement inside. One of them opened the curtain and saw Gu Jiao's face covered in blood. His expression changed and he was about to walk towards Gu Jiao. Don't move. Gu Jiao raised her hand to stop him. The hidden guard's steps stopped. Dr. Gu, are you all right? What happened? I'm fine. Gu Jiao slowly lowered her hand. It seemed like a normal action, but no one knew how much self-control she used. She calmly said, None of you are allowed to come in. Shen Xian, move aside. She always called him Little Shi, but this was the first time she called him by his name. Shan Xian subconsciously sensed that there was something wrong with her. Dr. Gu. He moved aside in a daze. Gu Jiao once again squatted down in front of Squire Zhao. Squire Zhao was intimidated by Gu Jiao's silent calmness. He didn't dare to move or make a sound. When he pulled out the needle, he used too much force and tore a blood vessel. Gu Jiao calmly and skillfully treated his injury. She reinserted the needle and calmly said, The medicine is very expensive, don't make me waste it. She wouldn't waste medicine unless the person was dead. Squire Zhao looked at Gu Jiao, who didn't get angry at all. He didn't know why, but he inexplicably shivered. After Gu Jiao came out of the tent, she found an empty place and sat down against a bamboo tree. She took off the contaminated goggles and mask, as well as a pair of gloves. She did not know if she would be infected. She took 2 chloramphenicol from the small medicine box, grabbed a handful of cold snow, and swallowed it. The Gu family army went to attack the city, leaving behind only 100 people to take care of these sick people. The forest was quiet, but Gu Jiao seemed to be able to hear the sound of war drums and horns, the sound of chariots slamming into the city gate, and the sound of the Gu army climbing up the ladder. She leaned against the bamboo and looked up at the obscure and boundless sky. A trace of confusion appeared on her face. For a moment, her mind was blank. Dr. Gu. A secret guard walked over and reported, "Someone's coming." Gu Jiao entered a state of combat readiness in a second. She stood up and picked up the small basket on her back. "How many people?" The shadow guard said, 20 people, and a few of them are death warriors. It seems that the remnants of the previous dynasty found that the plague patients were missing, so they sent people to capture them. Gu Jiao had already made several preparations. If no one chased them, they would wait here for Gu Chongqing and the Gu family army's triumphant return. If someone chased them, they would change to another place. She had at least 3 backup places. Gu Jiao said to the secret guard, "You take the patients and go to the ruined temple on the way here." "Yes." The secret guard only listened to orders and did not question Gu Jiao's decision. The secret guard and 100 Gu family army soldiers took the patients and moved them. Squire Zhao was honest this time. He sat in the carriage, and Shan Xian hung his infusion bottle on the carriage. "Do you still remember how to pull out the needle?" Gu Jiao asked Shan Xian. The first time she went to the village, she gave Shan Xian an injection. Shan Xian nodded. "I remember." "That's good." Gu Jiao did not say anything more. She took the red tasseled spear and the small basket and walked in the direction of the group of experts. "Dr. Gu." Shan Xian called her. "What's the matter?" Gu Jiao turned her head. Shan Xian sat in the carriage and stretched his head out of the window. He said to her through the mask, "You will be okay?" Gu Jiao glanced at him and did not answer his question. Instead, she said, "If I don't catch up in an hour, you go to Yuegu City first and find a doctor surnamed Song. He will know what to do." She left a lot of medicine for Dr. Song, including chloramphenicol and ribavirin. Shan Xian wanted to say something but hesitated. Gu Jiao turned around and disappeared into the boundless night. Shan Xian looked at Gu Jiao's small figure that gradually disappeared into the forest. The carriage moved slowly, and his eyes did not move away for a long time. The group of people moved very quickly. They rode their horses and came to the depths of the forest in less than a quarter of an hour. They raised their speed to the maximum. Who would have thought that they would suddenly see a small, unfamiliar figure in the distance in the bamboo forest, in the snow? It seemed to be a young man wearing dark armor. He held a helmet in one hand and a red tasseled spear in the other. The young man did not have a crown, so his black hair was not tied up high. Instead, he only used a light blue hairband to tie half of it behind his head. The other half was draped over his shoulders and fluttered in the cold wind. They were still far away, and the young man had been motionless, but everyone felt the murderous aura of the mountains and rivers from the young man's body. The 20 people tightened the reins in their hands almost at the same time. The leader of the men of sacrifice was the first to react. He frowned and coldly said, "It's a soldier of the Zhao country. Kill him." The Gu army's armor was silver. When Tang Yueshan made the armor for Gu Jiao, it was made according to the style of the Tang family's archers, but it was not exactly the same. Her weapon was a spear, and this armor was tailor-made for her and her red tasseled spear. It was the unique armor of the Zhao country. The 2 men sped up and pulled out their long swords. Gu Jiao coldly glanced at them. She lightly put on the helmet and pulled down the mask, revealing only a pair of murderous eyes. At this moment, the 20 masters' hearts all skipped a beat. A chill ran down their spines. It was too late to retreat. Besides, they couldn't retreat. 20 masters couldn't defeat a young man. If word got out, people would laugh their heads off. "Kill." The leader of the men of sacrifice gave the order. The next second, the murderous red tasseled spear appeared and cut off his head with unstoppable force. Blood splattered all over his companion, and a round head rolled onto the snowy ground. Before his horse could even stop, its hooves had already trampled over that head. Everyone was shocked. How could this young man have such skills? No, it should be said that he looked young. How could he be so ruthless? Is he a man of sacrifice? An expert asked. His voice was trembling. One of the 4 men of sacrifice had died. The remaining 3 all looked at the young man in front of them. The young man did seem to have a trace of a man of sacrifice, but it was stronger than a man of sacrifice. They couldn't tell what it was. They instinctively felt fear towards the murderous young man in front of them. Even so, the young man didn't plan on letting them go. His red tasseled spear quickly attacked them again. This time, he attacked another man of sacrifice. Normal soldiers couldn't tell the difference between an expert and a man of sacrifice. A stronger expert might be able to, but they couldn't be so accurate and fast. When the 4 men of sacrifice all died under the young man's red tasseled spear, the rest of the people knew they didn't have any chance of winning. Retreat! A man in black shouted. He took the lead to run away. Gu Jiao grabbed the red tasseled spear and coldly looked at his back. She suddenly threw the red tasseled spear. The huge force was like 10,000 arrows, knocking the man in black and his armor off his horse. His entire back was pierced through, and he fell heavily into the snow. The rest of the people didn't even have the will to fight. They looked fearfully at the young man who pulled out the red tasseled spear and walked towards them step by step. The blood from the red tasseled spear dripped onto the snow, like flowers blooming on the road to the underworld. You, don't come over. We're King Yi's trusted aides. Another man in black sat on the horse and held the reins tightly as he spoke to Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao didn't stop. Everyone couldn't help but gulp. The man in black continued, His Highness King Yi is the son of destiny chosen by the living Buddha. He's the Emperor Star. As long as you're willing, His Highness King Yi will definitely give you a high position and generous salary. The murderous young man was getting closer and closer. Everyone unconsciously leaned back. The man in black broke out in a cold sweat and said, You just have to let us go, and His Highness King Yi will reward you. Don't think that your Zhao Kingdom's imperial court will win just because the Gu army is here. The Chen Kingdom's 100,000 reinforcements will soon arrive at the frontier fortress. They've brought the Liang Kingdom's ballistae. Attacking the city is as easy as walking on flat ground. You can't win. Before he could finish, the young man's red tasseled spear pierced his heart. You talk too much. The young man finished speaking indifferently and pulled out the red tasseled spear expressionlessly. The black-clothed man fell straight into the snow. The horse neighed in fright and shifted its hooves uneasily. Everyone else kept their mouths shut. We don't talk much. Don't kill us. The young man glanced at them with a world-weary gaze. You don't even have any last words. Looks like you're ready to die. Everyone. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_826/109339765. HTML Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 513. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. A quarter of an hour later, the murderous forest quieted down. 19 of the 20 people were gone, leaving only one man in black kneeling in the snow, trembling. Gu Jiao looked down at him, the tip of the red tasseled spear pressed against his heart. Your prince consort has a very powerful death warrior. Where is he? The man in black was startled. Perhaps he hadn't recovered from the huge massacre, but it took him a long time to realize what Gu Jiao was talking about. He swallowed and said in a trembling voice, "Young hero." "Wait, this isn't a young hero. It's a girl." "Yes, she's clearly a girl." Even if she didn't change her voice, there was still a big difference between a young man and a young girl's voice. Just now, he was so frightened by the young man in front of him that he even forgot to listen carefully. The fear in the man in black's eyes didn't lessen because the other party was a girl. On the contrary, he was even more afraid. What kind of girl could be so terrifying? Was she a death warrior that only the nobles of the Yen Kingdom had? Death warriors originally came from the Yen Kingdom. The other 5 kingdoms would spend a lot of money to hire or buy death warriors from the Yen Kingdom, but they weren't the most powerful ones. Only their prince consort had a chance to get a death warrior from the Yen Kingdom. "Young miss." The man in black didn't know whether to call the other party a young hero or a girl. He stammered for a long time, then stammered, "Are you asking about Sirius?" "Sirius?" Gu Jiao repeated indifferently. How capable was he to have such a flashy name? Gu Jiao noticed that when the man in black mentioned Sirius, a trace of fear appeared in his eyes. "Is he very powerful?" Gu Jiao asked. The man in black said, "He's more than powerful. The death warriors of the Prince Consort and Prince Yi combined are no match for him alone." Gu Jiao wasn't sure if the men of sacrifice in the hands of the Prince Consort and Prince Yi were at the same level as the 4 men from before. To be honest, the 4 men weren't weak, but they weren't too strong either. On the contrary, the fact that the 3 dragon shadow guards that Tang Yueshan had mentioned were all injured by this death warrior caught Gu Jiao's attention. Gu Jiao wasn't sure if he could defeat the 3 dragon shadow guards because he could only defeat 3, or if there were only 3 dragon shadow guards for him to fight. Actually, no matter which one it was, the power of this death warrior was terrifyingly strong. "Where is Sky Wolf?" Gu Jiao asked. In the prince consort's residence," the black-clothed man said fearfully. He guessed that Gu Jiao might not understand, so he explained, "It's not far from the governor's office. Just walk out of the governor's office's main entrance and head east for 2 li." Gu Jiao finished him off with a single shot. As usual, she plundered the valuables on their bodies. Choosing a horse as her mount, she galloped towards Lingguan City. She didn't know if she was infected, but she still put on some protection before entering the city. The entrance to Lingguan City had already been breached by the Gu clan army, and the 2 sides were fighting fiercely in the city. Gu Jiao took a detour and went directly to the prince consort's residence. The flames of war hadn't spread here yet, but the news of the battle should have spread throughout the city. The doors and windows of every household were tightly shut, and the streets were deserted. There wasn't a single citizen wandering around. Gu Jiao's horses' hooves echoed loudly on the long street. From time to time, there would be soldiers coming from the governor's office to provide reinforcements. Gu Jiao didn't fight them head-on. Her target was Sky Wolf. When she approached the prince consort's residence, Gu Jiao dismounted and left the horse in the alley. The last time Gu Jiao came to Lingguan City's governor's office, she had passed by here. At that time, she didn't know that this was the prince consort's residence. If there was a difference, there was. At least when she passed by here, there weren't so many soldiers guarding this place. This time, there was almost an entire army surrounding the residence. This action was somewhat thought-provoking. Lingguan City was at war, and the Gu clan army was at the city gates, fighting to the death with the remnants of the previous dynasty. Every soldier was important, but the prince consort had so many soldiers guarding the residence. He probably wasn't just guarding against Gu Chongqing and the Gu clan army, but also against his own uncle and the soldiers of the Chen kingdom. Once the remnants of the previous dynasty were defeated, Princess Ning'an would become their only bargaining chip to threaten the Zhao kingdom. King Yi definitely wanted to use Princess Ning'an as a shield, or use her to make a deal with the Chen kingdom army. Gu Jiao observed for a while in the alley across from her. Suddenly, several imperial bodyguards rode over and stopped in front of the gates of the prince consort's residence. The leader took out a token at his waist and said to the soldiers guarding the residence, "The prince consort has orders to transfer the princess to a safe place." The soldiers guarding the residence moved aside to make a path. The bodyguards entered the residence. Since they wanted to transfer Princess Ning An, that person called Tian Lang should also be escorting Princess Ning An away. Gu Jiao decided to wait for him to come out and wait for an opportunity to make a move on him on the way. Gu Jiao waited in the alley for about 15 minutes before the bodyguards rode out again. It was still the leader who spoke. He said to the soldiers, "Come with us to escort the princess away." "Yes." The soldiers responded. Gu Jiao's eyes turned cold. The soldiers lined up on both sides. In a flash, a tightly shut carriage drove out of the residence. The person sitting in the carriage must be Princess Ning, and Gu Jiao's goal was very clear. It was to kill Tian Lang. As for Princess Ning An, if there was a chance after killing Tian Lang, she would take her away with her. But she wouldn't give up on killing Tian Lang just to save her. After the carriage left the residence, a dark horse stepped out from behind the door with heavy hooves. A man wearing black armor sat on the horse's back. Even though he was sitting on the horse, one could still see that he was tall and straight. He was taller than the average man. Like Gu Jiao, he was wearing a metal helmet, only revealing a pair of cold eyes. From a distance, his eyes seemed to be blood red, revealing a murderous aura. The moment he rode out on his horse, the horses around him became restless. Gu Jiao stared at him without blinking. She clenched the red tasseled spear in her hand. After that, several more carriages came out of the residence. After they left, Gu Jiao went to the alley to get the horse. In order not to be discovered, Gu Jiao stayed far away. The snow had stopped, and there were footprints everywhere in the snow. She didn't have to worry about losing track of them. However, this group of people was not completely brainless. They probably guessed that the traces in the snow would easily expose their whereabouts. Not long after, they began to split into two groups. When they reached the next fork in the road, they began to split into 4 groups. No wonder there are so many carriages. They are all used to confuse people. But Gu Jiao didn't remember the tracks of the carriages, but rather Tian Lang's hoofprints. His horse was taller than a normal horse, so the hoofprints were deeper. It was easy to say, but it wasn't easy to tell which of the hoofprints were deeper. It was a good thing that Gu Jiao had undergone tracking training in the organization. She followed Tian Lang's hoofprints through Lingguan City and came to the quiet and cold outskirts. When they passed by a small hill, Tian Lang's hoofprints suddenly disappeared. Gu Jiao's brows knit. After that, a cold aura came from the soles of her feet. Killing intent came from everywhere. Gu Jiao suddenly raised her red tasseled spear and swung it above her head to block it. With a loud clang, the weapons collided fiercely, creating tiny golden sparks in the darkness of the night. It was Tian Lang. He had found her. He decided to wait here and kill her. The horse couldn't withstand the great pressure. It cried out in pain and wildly charged forward, and it was this charge that caused Gu Jiao to lose her balance. Gu Jiao leaned back and raised her foot to kick Tian Lang's chin. Tian Lang's palm hit the bottom of her boot. Gu Jiao borrowed the force and flipped backwards. The red tasseled spear touched the snow, helping her to stabilize her body after flipping in the air. Gu Jiao held the red tasseled spear and vigilantly stood in the ice and snow. About 10 feet in front of her stood the tall and sturdy Tian Lang, whose killing intent filled the sky. Gu Jiao found that she had underestimated his height. His weapon was also a red tasseled spear. It was the same size as Gu Jiao's red tasseled spear, but it was clear that his red tasseled spear couldn't compare to Gu Jiao's. His eyes fell on Gu Jiao's red tasseled spear. He slightly narrowed his eyes, as if he was a little surprised. Gu Jiao followed his gaze and looked at the red tasseled spear in her hand. That attack just now was truly terrifying. If it was any other weapon, it would have already been broken in half. Her red tasseled spear didn't even have a small crack on it. Her sworn brother was loyal enough to give her a peerless divine weapon. Tian Lang stared at Gu Jiao's red tasseled spear. His eyes revealed a trace of undisguised desire. He had his eyes on her weapon. Gu Jiao wiped the snow that had splashed on her helmet. Her cold and stubborn eyes looked at Tian Lang. Very good, I also want your life. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/1093164454. HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile reading website, zhbqg.com. Chapter 514. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all the novels that you can't find on the internet. It was impossible to deal with an expert like Sirius head-on. She had only recovered 20 to 30% of her strength. She couldn't even beat the dragon shadow guards, let alone Sirius. She had to outsmart him. However, Gu Jiao didn't expect Sirius to be so vigilant. This wasn't the most advantageous terrain in Gu Jiao's plan. She had seen the map of Lingguan City. There was a canyon 3 miles ahead in this direction. That canyon was the battlefield for her to deal with Sirius. Unfortunately, Sirius found it too early. The current geographical conditions were a little unfavorable for Gu Jiao. It was too open. It was too suitable for Sirius to slaughter Gu Jiao, this little cub. Sirius didn't even ask who Gu Jiao was. He just used his second killing move on Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao wasn't sure if he couldn't speak or was too lazy to speak. He looked at Gu Jiao with disdain. That was true. With his skills, he was an adult wolf. Gu Jiao could only be considered a lone wolf's cub at most. What was there to be afraid of? Sirius's second attack was no longer aimed at Gu Jiao's red tasseled spear. Since he had taken a fancy to this weapon, he wouldn't destroy it. He directly stabbed at Gu Jiao's neck. He actually intended to cut off Gu Jiao's head. This kind of fighting style was too arrogant. Gu Jiao blocked his attack with her spear for the second time. Sirius's cold eyes narrowed slightly. He didn't expect this little cub to have some skills. Gu Jiao always remembered what her godfather had told her. The best defense in the world was offense. She couldn't stay in the same place and wait for Sirius to hit her. She had to hit Sirius. She grabbed the red tasseled spear with her right hand and attacked Sirius's face. Her left hand secretly held the syringe hidden in her sleeve. She pushed off the needle cap with her thumb and stabbed Sky Wolf's neck the moment she got close to it. Sirius was fully armed. Only his neck, hands, and eyes were exposed. Obviously, the neck was the easiest place to attack. During this period of time, Gu Jiao's strength had not stopped recovering. Compared to when she was in the capital, she had improved a lot. Gu Jiao's hands were so fast that only afterimages could be seen. No one knew that her left and right hands were actually equally agile. She could be right-handed or left-handed. Her habits were habits that she wanted others to see. It had to be said that her hand was too fast, so fast that Sirius did not expect that she would use a hidden weapon on him. However, Sirius was not to be trifled with. The moment the needle pierced his neck, he reacted in time and sent Gu Jiao flying with a slap. Gu Jiao slid back dozens of steps in the snow. She did not stop until she stabbed the red tasseled spear into the depths of the snow. The syringe was also sent flying. What a pity. That was a superior anesthetic. It was okay to fight, but it was not a waste of medicine. Gu Jiao was very angry. She straightened up while gasping. She walked over to pick up the syringe that was sent flying and attacked Sirius again. She did not use any fancy moves. Sirius sent Gu Jiao and the syringe flying again. This time, Gu Jiao was not as lucky as the first time. She fell heavily into the snow and could not get up for a long time. Sirius thought that she was dead, so he came to collect his trophies, the red tasseled spear. Unexpectedly, Gu Jiao supported herself with her hands on the cold ground. She looked like a ferocious little beast. She grabbed the syringe in the snow and stabbed it at Sirius relentlessly. Sirius was really annoyed. After sending Gu Jiao flying again, he planned to break the hidden weapon first and then stomp on Gu Jiao's head. It would be best if he could make Gu Jiao's brains splatter all over the ground. Gu Jiao and the red tasseled spear fell into the snow together. She covered her chest and resisted the taste of blood in her throat. She coldly stared at Sirius. Sirius came to the other side and raised his foot to stomp on the syringe. However, at this moment, something incredible happened. The moment the syringe broke, Sirius was sent flying by the sudden explosion under his foot. Gu Jiao coldly raised the corner of her mouth. Did he really think that it was still a syringe? Did he know about detonators? It was not easy to make a detonator. Secondly, it was hard to preserve. It would explode once it was shaken. If it was shaken before it left her hand, the first one to die would be Gu Jiao herself. Moreover, the detonator she made was different from the detonators in her previous life. First of all, it was much less powerful. After all, she extracted the nitroglycerin from the medicine in the small medicine box. The purity and dosage were not high enough. She only had one. She had never tried it before. However, judging from the blood on Sirius's body, it seemed to be quite powerful. It was stronger than the black fire pearl. Sirius fell into the snow. His armor was broken and his helmet was blown away. It was hard to tell where he was injured, but his body was covered in blood. He tried to move, but the knockoff detonator was probably too powerful. His body trembled slightly and he couldn't get up for a long time. Very good, I'll kill you while you're sick. Gu Jiao grabbed the red tasseled spear and walked towards Sirius while enduring the pain all over her body. She had thought about using the detonator on Sirius, but she was not sure if Sirius would choose to dodge. If he dodged, she would not be able to hit him. So, she could only lure him to destroy the detonator himself. In order to make him take the bait, Gu Jiao held the syringe and took so many hits. Now, she was a little exhausted. Gu Jiao walked to Sirius and looked at him, panting, "But I still have the strength to kill you." Then, she gritted her teeth, raised the red tasseled spear and stabbed at Sirius's heart. In the blink of an eye, Sirius, who had been stunned by the explosion, suddenly grabbed Gu Jiao's spear with a sense of crisis. He abruptly pulled downwards. Gu Jiao's exhausted body almost fell forward uncontrollably. Sirius raised his other hand and grabbed Gu Jiao's neck. His scarlet eyes made him look like a ferocious beast. But he forgot that Gu Jiao was also a ferocious little beast. Gu Jiao did not grab his hand that was grabbing her neck at all. Instead, she turned her hand and the real syringe fell into her hand. She stabbed it into his shoulder at lightning speed. This time, it was not anesthetic. It was neurotoxin. It could paralyze the nerve center of the human body in a very short time, paralyze the muscles and limbs, and gradually make the person lose the ability to breathe on his own, and finally suffocate to death. This was a special neurotoxin from the Research Institute. It was several times faster than the same kind of neurotoxin on the market. An ordinary person would take effect in 3 seconds, but he was a master. Gu Jiao gave him 10 seconds. However, 10 seconds passed. He was still tenaciously holding on. His grip on Gu Jiao's neck did not weaken at all. However, because of his injury, he could not use his original strength. Even so, if he continued to pinch her like this, Gu Jiao would not be able to breathe. There was only one syringe of this drug, and it would be gone after it was used. Moreover, even if there was, Gu Jiao would not be able to get it now. Gu Jiao decided to dig out his eyeballs directly. Unexpectedly, he chose to give up on grabbing Gu Jiao's red-tasseled spear, and used his bloody hand to hit Gu Jiao's acupoints. Gu Jiao's hand that was about to dig out his eyeballs froze in mid-air. Gu Jiao's mind was full of one sentence. It was over. It was up to him to kill her or cut her. Sirius threw Gu Jiao into the snow. He did not grab the red-tasseled spear on the ground. Instead, he pulled out the dagger in his boots. The neurotoxin began to take effect. Gu Jiao's eyes rolled. She saw that his hand that was holding the dagger began to tremble. He might not have the strength to stab himself. Sirius could not stab himself, but he could cut his throat. This dagger could cut through iron like it was mud. He fell down beside Gu Jiao and pointed the dagger at Gu Jiao's neck with trembling hands. Gu Jiao felt a deep chill on her neck. The blade was about to cut open her delicate neck. However, at this moment, the neurotoxin in Sirius's body finally took effect. His hand trembled, and the dagger fell beside Gu Jiao's ear. He fell on his knees on Gu Jiao's body. Gu Jiao. Sirius fell sideways on Gu Jiao's body. His head was facing down in the snow. It was quite heavy. Snow began to fall from the sky again. It was not heavy, but the north wind was extremely cold. It was like a knife cutting people's faces. Gu Jiao's pressure points were sealed. She lay in the snow, unable to move. The neurotoxin paralyzed Sirius's breathing. Sirius finally became an ice-cold corpse. However, Gu Jiao's body also began to stiffen. She looked at the snowflakes in the sky. She looked at the obscure and boundless sky. She listened to the cold wind whistling past her ears. Bit by bit, she lost consciousness. It had to be said that the path of the emperor's son-in-law was very good. Other than her, no one else could find it. The vast snowfield stretched as far as the eye could see. Who could see the two tiny figures lying in the snow? After an unknown amount of time, the light shui turned into goose-feather-heavy snow. The blood and smell on the ground were covered by large pieces of snow. She and Sirius were also covered in a thin layer of snow. Digression, let me guess. Someone will jump out and say that Jiao Jiao is weak, or too reckless. What I want to say is that Jiao Jiao's goal was to kill Sirius. She did it. She protected her brother. She was great. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that you can't find online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642-826/1093149777. HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile reading website, zhbqg.com. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.